Welcome to the July 28th, 2021 ZBA meeting for the town of Merrimack. Will you please all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we get started, we have 4 seated members tonight for the meeting, so we do have enough for a quorum for a meeting. However, any petitioner that is going to be heard tonight, you need to get a unanimous, you need to get 3 out of 4 people to vote in favor. If you get a tie, meaning 2 yeses, 2 nos, your petition fails. Or your petition will not go through. You have the option, because we don't have a full board this evening, to have your petition continued to when we do have a full board, or you can come up and speak. I'm giving this option out now for everybody. If there's any petitioner that wants to hold off until we have a full board, you can let me know. Okay. All right.
And along those same lines, allow me.
Yes.
Right now, you have 5 people on the ZBA. You have no alternates. So all of you people who are sitting here in the room who are interested in what's going on and are residents of Merrimack, I would suggest that you put your name in as an alternate so that when we have this situation where somebody cannot sit and the petitioners are put in this position of saying, do I want to take my chance or do I not want to? Please, put your name in. It's not that hard. Community development is super helpful as far as what you need to do. I don't know a lot about this stuff. I stepped up because somebody needed to. So please, Chuck, you could do this.
Thank you very much, Lynn, for the recruiting speech.
Talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors, get them. It's one night a month.
Rod, could you please read in the
Preamble.
Yes.
Good evening to those in attendance and watching at home. For the benefit of those who have not previously attended a zoning board hearing, the procedure is as follows. The petitions will be heard in the order they appear on the agenda. However, the chair may change the order at their discretion. The board will treat all petitioners, their representatives, abutters, and other interested parties fairly and with respect. The petitioner will be asked to give an overview of their petition and read through their responses to the criteria applicable to their case, allowing for the board to ask questions after each item. State law and local ordinances establish the criteria that must be met in order for the board to grant approval to a petition, and it is the petitioner's responsibility to demonstrate that they have met each criterion. Following the presentation, the chair will open the floor for public comment, either in favor or opposed to the request. If necessary, an opportunity for rebuttal will be offered to the petitioner and the public. However, discussion will not be allowed to devolve into back and forth arguments. All comments made shall be directed towards the chair. Should a question be asked, the chair will pose the question to the petitioner. Afterward, the chair will close the public hearing and the board will deliberate and vote on the petition. At this time, reminder to silence all your mobile devices.
Thank you very much, Rod. So again, as was stated, if you want to continue your petition and wait for a full board, you are more than welcome to do that. So when your petition is read, I'm going to need you to come down. We do not have a sign-in sheet, but I will need you to make sure that you state your name and address for the record. And the next ZBA meeting is going to be on August 25th, 2021 at 7 p.m. in the Matthew Thornton room. All right, so with that being said, the first petition, Buildin Properties LLC petitioner owner appeal of administrative decision determining that the current use of the property is a quote-unquote junkyard per the town zoning ordinance and New Hampshire RSA 236.112 The parcel is located at 719 Daniel Webster Highway in the C2 General Commercial, R4 Residential, and Planned Residential Districts, tax map 70, lot 052, case number ZBA 2021-07. This petition has been, the petitioner has requested that this be continued to the August 25th, 2021 meeting so that they have a full board to review this decision. So this petition will not be heard this evening. This will be continued, or actually the board will vote on whether or not to continue this.
I will so move.
So move, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, motion made by Lynn, seconded by Rod. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. 4, all in favor is no, okay, all 4, 0, 0. So the petition, the Build and Properties petition will be continued to August 25th, 2021. It's been a little rusty, it's been about 6 years since I've been the zoning, been the chair, so forgot to swear everybody in. If you're gonna be speaking tonight, please stand and raise your right hand. I forgot to swear everybody in, I just realized that. If you're going to be speaking on any petition for or against, in favor, raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God. Thank you very much. Next petition.
Patrick, before
Yes.
we get there, are there any others that have requested continuance?
If I haven't heard from any other petitions that want to request a continuance before I move forward. Ma'am?
Is-
Sure, come on up.
Bernards Road in Merrimack.
Yep.
So I was here to speak to that
The
petition.
Building Properties?
Yes.
Okay.
So will we need to have certified letters again for the next meeting when it's continued?
No.
No, because we continued to a date certain, so no, we don't.
So how will folks be informed?
They'll have to look at the website.
Okay, thank you.
Or if they're watching this evening, they'll have seen it, or if they watch a rebroadcast of this, they'll see that.
Okay,
it's
I
being
can get
continued.
word out because I live at the condos
Yeah,
that,
sure.
about that
Yeah.
property, so I can do that. I just didn't know if that came from you or from us.
By law, if it's continued to a date certain, they're not required to do renotices.
Okay, thank you. Have a
Thank
good
you.
night.
Thank you, you too. All right, next petition is Nikolai and Tanya Gapanov, petitioners, owners, variance under section 2.02.1.A.2.C of the zoning ordinance to permit a contractor/storage yard as a level 1 home occupation. The parcel is located at 109 Bedford Road in the R1 Residential by Soils and Aquifer Conservation Districts, tax map 6C, lot 194, case number ZBA 2021-23. Come on down. I'm actually going to be recusing myself from this one, and based on conversations from last meeting. Lynn Christensen will be the stand-in chair for this meeting, and so I'm going to step away.
My name is Tanya Gapinoff.
Tanya is your bright green light.
There you go. Tanya Gapinoff, 109
There you go.
Bedford Road in Merrimack, 03054.
Go right ahead.
Okay. What do I do?
You need to go through the criteria. When you submitted the application for the variance, there was criteria that you needed to submit. Answers to questions.
Okay.
You can start in your first one.
Oh, okay.
Go through like you did last time.
Okay. So the variance is in order to permit my husband, Nikolai Gapinoff, to have home occupation for his small.
Tanya, you're not transmitting, so you need to speak directly into the mic.
Okay.
Bring it close to you.
We've been socially distanced this whole time, you know what I mean? So.
Yeah?
It's in order to permit Nikolai Gapinoff to have home occupation for his small concrete business.
So, number one,
Number one, so granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest because our home occupation does not alter character of the neighborhood. I mean, we live on a busy street that is not part of like a subdivision or anything. It does not threaten public health, safety, or welfare. There is no odor, fumes, smoke, dust, vibrations, noise, or light produced by the home occupation. Number two, this
questions from the board? Ben?
Could you give us a general background on the nature of the business? What's done on site, what is done elsewhere?
Oh, okay.
Number of employees, et cetera, number
Sure.
of vehicles?
Okay. So, me and my husband, is over there, we've been living in Merrimack. We have 3 kids. They're 7, 5, and 1.5. And my husband is self-employed. It's just him. There's no employees. He's just doing his thing with his little business. So he's just running it out of his shed that we have permitted on our land. We have one vehicle, like a truck, a Ford F-350 on there, that he drives to work, and he does work like off-site. Like if you were gonna have somebody do like your patio, like they come to you, they do your patio at your house with all the materials at your house, and then, they drive back to their home, to their family. And we recently made a little fence, planted some arborvitaes to make it pretty. We removed everything outside. That was the problem, which initiated the complaint. So we moved everything somewhere else where we're storing it. And we're just looking to have just the home occupation permit as per section 2.02.1.8, .2C, point C. Yeah, is that good? No?
Tanya,
thank you.
Okay.
as I understand, you have materials, excuse me, that you are storing on site?
So before, what happened is during Corona, my husband got an amazing deal on a boom truck. And it's big. It's a big vehicle with a boom, and our neighbor was upset. And, because it's an ugly big truck. We didn't know that we were not supposed to have it there. We had a lot of stuff there. And so we got the complaint, and Robert from the zoning administrator, he was like, oh, that's all the stuff outside is a contractor's yard. That's not allowed. So we were like, okay. So we cleared it all out, got the boom truck moved, all of that. And so right now, what we're looking for is in the ordinance, it allows you to have 500 square feet or less under level 1 home occupation of space related to the business. However, the ordinance does not have contractors no longer in there, so we can't have 500 square feet enclosed in our shed of
But the point
materials.
is, do you have materials stored on the site, and are they stored in the shed?
I'm sorry, that's what we want, yes.
Is that what you have now? Is that what you're
Yes.
doing now? Okay. And
what
how
we
many
wanna have.
vehicles do you have that are involved here?
1.
So anytime you go to pick up materials or deliver materials, it will be done just by that one vehicle?
Right, but if somebody's doing your patio, you would order concrete, a different truck orders it.
Coming to and from your house?
Yes.
And the
So
shed that has...
materials would be I don't know, what's a
No, I understand what that is, but I'm saying you would have only your own vehicle
Yes.
coming to the storage shed, picking up or delivering materials to that shed. You
So
wouldn't
we're
have-
not looking to put
You wouldn't have other vehicles?
Oh, no.
Okay, that's all I'm asking.
no, it's just,
Okay.
it's if you're a painter, you just put a bucket
No,
in
I
your
understand.
truck like that.
Yep.
It's not like you're delivering something and keeping
One
something.
vehicle?
One vehicle.
Okay, that's
Yes.
all I'm asking. Okay, all right, go on to number 2.
Number 2. Oh, I lost my paper. Let's see. Oh. And I did these myself, so I hope I did them right.
That's all right.
The spirit of the ordinance is observed because we are seeking to have a home occupation permit in compliance with the rules outlined in section 2.02.1 of the ordinance, and our home occupation fits the definition of home occupation as outlined in the ordinance.
Questions? Okay, number 3?
Okay. So number 3 asks, granting the variance would do substantial justice because Merrimack ordinance allows for home occupations as defined, non-residential use carried on within a residence or its accessory buildings, which use is clearly incidental and secondary to the principal use of the property as a residence and does not change the character thereof. Our home occupation meets that description, and it also follows all the rules as outlined in the Level 1 Home Occupation Section 2.02.1. We are a middle-class family trying to raise our 3 young kids. I'm a stay-at-home mom, and my husband is the sole provider for our family financially. Granting this variance would clearly do substantial justice, as all people should be able to provide for their families as they see fit. as long as it's not physically harmful to others, and my business is clearly not physically harmful to others.
Questions? Rod, Ben?
I'm good.
So you're seeking a variance because a contractor's yard is not permitted based on these ordinances, and so that's why you're that's why you're seeking the variance.
I mean, I don't agree that what we have is called a contractor's yard, but I suppose so.
Okay.
Because
Thank you.
now, I guess, what Robert explained to me is yard is not just outside, yard is in your shed.
That's correct.
So, I just, you know, that word, people think like, oh, it's a yard, like it's stuff in the, like, we don't have stuff in the yard, we have stuff in our shed.
Yep, that's okay.
Okay, I just, you know.
Okay, I was just
kind of
clarifying
like-
why
that's like
we're.
upsetting
why
to
we're
me
s-
that they're calling
no,
our
why
stuff
we're
in the
seeking
thing.
the ordinances or the variances because that's not something that is permitted, and so you're saying we should be able to do this, and that's what you're asking for?
Yes.
Okay, good. 4.
Number 4, granting the variance would not diminish the values of surrounding properties because, I wrote, we are seeking to have home occupation permit and plan to follow the level 1 home occupation rules as outlined in section 2.02.01 of the ordinance. Items pertaining to the home occupation will be kept in the existing permitted accessory structure, which is our shed.
Okay. Questions? Rod, Ben?
I'm good.
Okay, go to number 5.
So I did the one with the unnecessary hardship under A. Do I read the whole thing under A?
Read the whole thing under A, yes,
Okay.
please.
Owing to the following special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, explain how no fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purpose of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property. The property has a permitted accessory structure, which is our shed, that will house items related to the home occupation. The shed is also located towards the back of the property. We are also in a process of installing, we already installed a privacy fence between us and our abutting neighbor at 111 Bedford Road. And then B, the proposed use is a reasonable one because we are seeking to have a home occupation permit in compliance with the rules outlined in section 2.02.1 and with our home occupation fitting the definition of home occupation as outlined in Merrimack ordinance. And that is very reasonable.
All right, Ben?
No
Rod?
questions.
This is asking for hardship. If we don't grant this, what kind of hardship does this cause for you?
So then my husband can't work and there's nobody to feed us.
So he can't move the materials someplace else?
So he moved some materials to a different place he found. We looked at the places in town and they run like $1,200 a month.
Okay,
To rent, like if you're like looking for a contractor bay. So we found a place in Londonderry at a more reasonable price where we're housing all the other items. So, I mean, we're a middle-class family. We're not looking to pay over $1,000 a month, you
so it's
know?
essentially financial is the hardship?
Of course, yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Well, and emotional, actually, like, I don't know, as an American, I feel like, you know, we should be able to run a small business out of our home and, you know, like,
Based on zoning regulations, you can. Okay, questions? Okay, Tanya, thank you very much. I'm going to open this up to public hearing. Is there anyone here who would like to speak for this petition? Seeing none, is there anyone here who would like to speak against this petition?
How about questions and comments?
Feel free, no, by all means. And you were sworn in, yes?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Have a seat and ask questions. Either one, as long as the bright
Green
green
light.
light is on. Name and address, please.
My name is Kathleen Versbrill, and I live at 111 Bedford Road. I've lived at this address with my husband for 45 years. I would like to begin tonight with some concerns which I have about the board and a meeting which was held on June 30th. At that meeting, I felt that the board was not impartial. Upon viewing the YouTube recording, I was even more convinced that the board had taken sides in a zoning issue. It is my understanding that the board is required to be impartial in hearing various sides in any disagreement or issue which is brought before them. This did not happen when several members supported the petitioners and encouraged further action on their part. It seemed as if there was a variance application that would be made, it would receive their support. This is not being impartial. At the same time, I did a little research and researched variance applications in Merrimack for the past 2 years and found that none were denied. This does not give me much confidence in tonight's proceedings. I would remind the board that contractor yards have been specifically deleted by the planning board and the town council during the most recent zoning amendment cycle. I would also take note of the variance criteria and suggest the following: that granting this application would be detrimental to the public interest. This is a residential neighborhood. Additionally, I believe that eventually surrounding properties could see their values diminished. I can't see where granting the variance would do substantial justice to anyone but the petitioner. Commercial vehicles, large, long trailers, construction equipment, materials are best housed in an industrial area. I would also add to that the following information that I found about level 1 home occupation: that there should be no storage of any items connected to the home occupation externally to the dwelling or its accessory buildings. And I took note of this. It says, no more than 500 square feet of existing gross living area, including space used in any accessory building, shall be utilized by the home occupation. And those would be my questions, my comments, my concerns as an abutter.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone else who would like? Is there anyone else who would like to speak for or against this petition? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing, and I will ask the petitioner to come forward.
Can we both say something?
Were you sworn in, sir? Yes, I was. Okay.
So just a few
Are
things.
mics on?
Yes, I think.
And, sir, would you introduce yourself, please, since you did before?
No, you need to press the button, honey, so it's like, no, it needs to be bright.
Okay. I'm Nick Gapanov. I
Okay.
am, I live at 109 Bedford Road, and I am the owner of the business.
Okay, thank you. Go right ahead.
So in that section, things are not allowed externally. But also, I just want to kind of put it out there that you can have anything externally on your property, including long trailers when you're doing residential work to your property, like your landscaping, your fence. And as far as I have checked, nobody is policing what you're doing on your residential property. And just makes me upset that people are. We do have things externally, but we're using them to do our things that are our business on our property. And the home occupation, we are fully fine to comply to the 500 square feet. 500 square feet is a big amount of space, that's enough for us. We're not looking to house any, when people say contractor's yard, we're not looking to do anything like major industrial as, you know, been putting it out. And our other butters who we have personally spoke with are completely fine with it. They do not feel their properties threatened or anything like that. We're keeping stuff inside our shed, and it's a contractor's yard, so to speak, but it's a contractor's yard the same way a painter's paintbrush, paint bucket, and scaffolding equipment, if they hold it in their shed, is considered contractor's yard by Merrimack zoning ordinance. So we're not looking to have what people think of a contractor's yard, big trucks, anything like that. We have one commercial vehicle, which people are allowed even without a home occupation in Merrimack. So I just wanted to add that.
No long
comment.
trailers.
No, we
One-
have a dump trailer, for example, right now, it's at our house. You know, it's not
It's
our
not a
person,
long
it's our,
trailer.
it's like a little trailer. My husband brought in some like ground to make it even and nice, to some loom and some stuff.
Okay.
But again, that's not something, what's on our property is not something we should be explaining to anybody, as it is
Okay.
our personal property that we pay taxes on.
Okay.
And whether we're using, you know, we have an, excavator on our property sometimes because we're doing fence and other things on our property residentially. So when our excavator's on our property, we're doing residential work. We're no longer housing heavy equipment since we received the initial thing where he said like that's not allowed. We have stopped doing that and we have moved everything away, only when we're using it. And I don't think we should be explaining why we have our excavator on our land. It's just very
you.
upsetting. I mean, this is a country of freedom, last I checked, but apparently,
Well,
you know,
it's-
people can see how tall your grass is and what you're allowed to have or
It's freedom based on
not
the
to
zoning
have.
regulations in the town. Ben?
Yeah, I'm getting confused again. You said you had one vehicle.
One
a
vehicle.
Ford F-350.
Yes.
Now you're talking about an excavator and another trailer?
So right now, we're putting a fence at our house, and we planted some arborvitaes, right? So to have a fence, you have to bring in stuff to level the ground. You have to bring stuff in. So we go to like the yard.
Just for
we-
personal yard work.
For personal
So
yard
you're
work.
installing your own fence?
We're installing our
Yeah,
own fence,
yeah.
yeah. So you have to
Okay.
put like, you know, the loom in your trailer, you have to bring it, you have to dump it. Otherwise, you have to pay somebody else like
Okay, but
delivery
that's not
charges.
equipment that's used in your day-to-day business with clients that live elsewhere.
Well, that's his trailer, you know,
And-
but
And
he's
it's not
not.
gonna be
That's-
staying there.
No, it's not gonna
No,
be staying,
no.
but, you know, if he's gonna do, like, for example, we need to get a bulkhead removed, right? It's cheaper if he can remove it himself, and then somebody comes in and casts it in, right? So why wouldn't we do it ourselves if we have equipment to save ourselves
No,
money?
you didn't understand my point. You have these other pieces of equipment, and you're saying how you're using them for your bulkhead,
Yeah.
your fence, your loam on
Right.
your property.
Right.
My question is any of that equipment used off-site of your property with the construction business you're in?
I'll answer that. So the equipment I own, I store elsewhere, but I brought it home to do some yard work at my house.
Okay.
And when I'm done, I will bring it back and store it elsewhere, where I have all my other stuff that I have relocated to.
Okay, I understand. So you have equipment that is for personal needs and business needs. The personal needs, it's at your house now. The business needs is from an off-site location that you're renting
Yes.
in Londonderry, I think you said.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
That is all. We just wanted to clarify that.
That's fine.
I'd like to say something.
Sure.
So since last meeting, I mean, I was surprised myself to find out that without this permit to be able to get a home occupation, even for somebody that's a painter, that they cannot just take a bucket of paint out of their garage, throw in their truck and go to work. And I don't think a lot of residents of the town of Merrimack even realize that because they took the word contractor out of
The prior ordinance.
the prior ordinance. It was there before when we moved in, but I don't think a lot of people realize that what this has done. That means just any small contractor, doesn't matter, you know, even if they just have like a little drill that they need to grab from their garage, that maybe they use at their house to put a picture up or something, and then they put it back in their truck, that, you know, they're not allowed to do that legally as according to to the ordinance. And I think it should be revised. But furthermore, I think, it's very dangerous to the town of Merrimack to take contractors, to not give them the right to work from their homes, because you just end up getting contractors from different towns coming in to do work in Merrimack and spending their money elsewhere. I live in Merrimack. The money I make, I spend here. I'll go to Hot Rides, I'll buy a bagel, I'll go to Buc-ee's, I'll go get myself an iced coffee in the morning. I take my kids to nothing but good times. We get ice cream in the town of Merrimack. I'm just a small businessman. It's just me. I just work by myself. I just want to have, I'm not storing like materials in my shed, like building materials. I just want to have the right to take like, my personal tools, maybe a couple 2x4s to go do a patio for somebody. I'm not looking to store concrete or, most of the materials I need, they get delivered to the job site from whether it's Continental in Litchfield or like a concrete company like Ready Mix or Benevento's. I just want to be able to jump in my truck and go to work and not have to go off-site somewhere to pick up a 2x4 or to pick up like my bag with a drill in it. I just want to be able to operate legally, and we've done a lot of changes to our yard. We spent over $6,000 in just fencing, arborvitaes, and we're still, ever since we moved in, we're still doing a lot of work to our house, because when we moved in, that thing was a mess. If anything, the way our property looks now, it's increased the value of nearby properties. And we can even show pictures to prove it when we bought it, when we moved in, the way it was, and the way it looks now. And we still have a lot more work to do. I'm still trying to clean the place up, make it look nice, but I'm just trying to be able to just simply jump in my truck and go to a job site and come back home, and not have to make these excess trips over just like little simple things that I can just keep in my shed just to be able to operate.
Thank you, Nick.
Point of information,
Yeah.
if I may.
Yep.
The ordinance clearly states for level 2, you can have 500 square feet for business use. It has to either be in your dwelling or an accessory building, which is your shed.
Yes.
That's permitted.
Yes.
One person occupied, that's you.
Yes.
You met that.
I'm sorry, it's level 1.
No storage, outside of the dwelling or accessory unit for business purposes.
Yep, that's
Okay? So it looks like you're meeting the requirements, okay, for the level 1 home occupation. So I disagree with your statement that the ordinance is written so that no one can occupy or can conduct an occupation from their house. A painter can't take a paintbrush out of
Well,
his
I said
garage.
I said without a
or shed.
permit, without first getting the
So-
permit, correct?
Pardon?
Without
No, these
first getting the
are
permit?
permitted uses.
So,
No, we were denied last hearing. That's what we were arguing last hearing, is that we comply with every
No, you-
single rule.
You were cited by the planning board for an occupation out of your house that is a contractor yard. That's when you had more vehicles, you had the big crane, which is gone. So your business has changed in appearance to your neighbors and to how I view it sitting on the zoning board of adjustment. But it was an administrative decision by the planning board, which
But
we're not
Ben, by
allowed
the
to-
planning department, not the planning board.
Oh, planning
please.
department,
Yep.
okay, which we're not allowed to overrule on the zoning board. That's why it was suggested you come for a variance, okay? But your business has changed too. So it seems like we should continue with this process tonight and give you a green light or a red light in terms of the initial complaint, which we do when we take a vote.
Let me
okay?
clarify a little bit here. The initial problem came was because you were well in excess of what you were allowed to do, even if a contractor yard was allowed. And that's what generated the initial complaint. Now, a contractor yard is not allowed as a home occupation. If it were, you would be fitting based on storage, based on square footage, based on number of vehicles, it would fit. But because a contractor yard is not an allowed home occupation, that's why you are coming to us to say, we want you to allow us to have a contractor's yard as long as we meet the criteria of the ordinance, which I think you are stating that, based on everything you've told us so far, that you do. And so you're just asking for that ordinance, that variance to the ordinance. You still have to go to planning board if we grant this variance to do all the details as far as, you know, hours of operation, where you can store things, how many cars, all of that has to go to planning board. You're just asking us to say, based on what we've done so far, will you allow us to be a contractor yard based on the ordinance, or give us a variance so that we can do that?
Yes,
Yes,
yes, I mean, we fit the definition, we fit the stuff. The only issue is because
because
It's
it's not an
contractor.
allowed home occupation, that's what you're asking for the variance for.
I mean, I
Yes.
still
Right, and
don't
I
agree
think,
with that, but, okay.
You can agree or not agree, it's what the ordinance is, and so that's why you're here, which is fine. You're taking the appropriate route.
Okay.
Rod?
no, I think you closed it well.
Okay. Any other comments from the board? I'm good. Thank you very much. I will entertain a motion if someone is so moved to make one.
I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to make a motion that we grant Nicolay and Tanya Gapanoff petitioners owners variance under section 2.02.1.A.2.c of the zoning ordinance to permit a contractor/storage yard as a level 1 home occupation. The parcel is located at 109 Bedford Road in the R1 Residential by Soils and Aquifer Conservation Districts, Tax Map 6C, Lot 194, case number ZBA 2021-23. The petitioner shall obtain approval, should the board find the petitioner meets the variance criteria, staff recommends that any approval be conditioned upon the following: that the petitioner shall obtain approval from the planning board for the proposed contractor yard.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ben. Further discussion?
None.
All those in favor?
Aye.
300. You are approved? Where'd you go? Well, you're hiding there, okay. You are approved. You do have, there is 30 days that somebody can appeal this decision, but you're approved at the moment, and you will have to go to planning board to discuss
Normal.
vehicles and sites and storage and all of those other things, okay? But you've got past the first step. Thank you very much. Patrick, you want to come back and join us? I'm much happier you doing this.
All right, next up. Lanson and Diane Simmons, petitioner owners, variance under section 3.05 of the zoning ordinance to permit the construction of a detached garage 10 feet from the side property line, whereas 15 feet is required. The parcel is located at 25 South Hegan Drive in the R4 Residential Elderly Housing Overlay and Aquifer Conservation Districts, tax map 5C, lot 528.
Gently.
Case number ZBA 2021-24. How you doing?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Oh, well,
State your name and
sure.
for the record, please.
My name's Lanson Simmons. I live at 25 Souhagen Drive in Merrimack, New Hampshire.
What are we talking about today, Lance? What are we looking to do?
Okay, we're requesting a variance from section 3.05 of the zoning ordinance.
Yep.
In order to permit the construction of a 24 by 24 detached garage in the R4 residential district at 25 Souhegan Drive in Merrimack.
Nope, I got that. Why don't you tell me a little bit about the garage? What's prompting the detached garage?
Well, we don't have a garage currently, so we'd like to add one.
That's usually a good start. That's why most people do it. All right. So you have the criteria that you put out for the variance.
Correct.
5 criteria.
Yeah.
If you could read each criteria, and then after each criteria, if you could stop in case there's any questions from the board.
Sure.
Thank you.
Granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest because, as the garage will be aesthetically pleasing and lend itself to the overall regular and uniform look of our development.
Any questions?
Nope.
All right, number 2.
The spirit of the ordinance is observed because the nonconformity of the lot allows the garage to be positioned only in an area of the lot between the residence and the side setback.
Questions?
Nope.
Number 3.
Granting the variance would do substantial justice because other homes in the neighborhood have standard 2-car garages and sought variance in the past for the same.
Okay. Number 4.
Granting the variance would not diminish the value of surrounding properties because, rather, it would increase the value of other homes in the neighborhood. And this addition will be an added amenity comparatively of other neighboring properties.
Number 5A.
Owing the following special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, explain how no fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purpose of the ordinance and the specific application of the provision of the property. The property is a double frontage lot with a 2 front and 2 side and no rear setback. As well, the drive is positioned on the second front on Courier Drive, which is not the actual address of the residence. This makes the residence driveway allowing a standard 24 by 24 garage and not any larger than this.
Okay. And could you read B, please?
The proposed use is a reasonable one because the 2-car garage will provide protection of the vehicles during inclement weather. Also provides storage for snow blowers, lawn mowers, and such. A 24 by 24 garage, therefore, is a reasonable use for the residents.
Outstanding. So I'm looking at the map here. So I see the house, it looks like the driveway's behind the house. Looks like the front of the house is facing Souhegan Drive.
Are you looking at the?
I'm looking at an aerial.
Okay.
Oh, you may or may not have.
Okay, so that aerial, I believe, has Souhegan Drive running across the bottom of the property.
Yep.
Would you like to borrow this?
Yep.
Thank you. Yeah, so we are 25 Souhegan Drive, however, excuse me, the actual driveway to the residence is off Courier. So we're looking to build the garage just to the north of the three-season porch that you see that protrudes northbound there.
The 3-season porch, which,
Yeah.
what is that? Is that the white square?
That's the piece of the structure that points northward.
Okay, I see. So where that white car is, you're putting it on the other side of that one.
Basically, where the white car is where we'd like to put the garage.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And because we want to, we've talked with some other folks in the town, and we realize that there's a setback between structures. Because of the aesthetic placement of the garage being in that general area, it would require a adjustment to the side setback to the north.
Which is why we're here today.
Right.
Okay. Excellent. All right. Any questions from the board? Go ahead.
On that same picture with the white car in it, is that pure woods from the white car to that pool in the picture above? Is there any buildings that we can't see under those trees?
There is a shed on our parcel and several outbuildings on the parcel to the north that are along the property line that are covered from the canopy of the trees.
Thank you.
Okay.
Where's the house on the property with the pool?
That's a great question.
I'd say it's under the
there.
canopy trees.
It's under the trees.
It's under the trees?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ben?
So
any
it isn't
questions?
quite the biggest
Nope.
buffer it looks like.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, you can see the driveway.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can see the driveway
Yeah.
that leads under the trees.
Okay.
Gotta love Google Maps. All right, is there anybody, unless there's any other questions from the board, I'm gonna open up the public hearing. Is there anybody that'd like to speak in favor of this petition? Is there anybody that'd like to speak against this petition? All right, if you just come on down, if you could just have a seat back in the audience.
Can you leave the picture so I see where you're putting it? Thank you, lady.
You have a seat and
Hi.
just state your name for the record, please.
Margot Parlin, 23 Courier Road, right
Oh,
next door. From the
okay.
pool.
Okay, all right.
I guess my question is, the first I heard of it was a letter, so I don't even know where the placement of this is going to be.
Okay.
And is it a variance because it's going to be 10 feet from my line? Is that what we're requesting?
It's gonna be, yeah, it's, instead of being, 15 feet, it's gonna, he needs 5 more feet to be able to put the garage in. So it'll be 10 feet from the property line as opposed to 15 feet. So if you see where that white car is,
Yeah?
it'll be on the other side of that white car.
I don't know if I want to give up the 5 feet, though. I don't know.
But you're,
Well, this is the first I've heard about it, was the letter, so I didn't know anything about this. And
you're
I'm
not
a
giving up
butter.
any, you're not giving up any feet.
I understand, I'm not giving up any feet, but
Right.
it's closer to my property than the ordinance and blah, blah, blah.
Right,
Correct.
right. But your property doesn't change, like, you don't lose anything
No,
on
I
your
know,
property.
I know
Okay,
that.
all right.
I know that, but I guess being a neighbor, I would have liked to have been notified. Hey, how do you feel about this? What do you think? Just,
Okay,
I mean, because it's abutting me.
right.
That was the letter that was sent to you to say,
Right.
hey, we're doing this.
Right.
And we're asking, so,
Right,
yeah.
yeah. So that's all. I mean, I don't know anything else about it except for that.
Okay. All right. Many of the homes on this street have garages?
A few.
A few, okay. I saw a couple when I was there.
Yeah,
so.
I was gonna say, it's not that many. There's some that came with the garages. The one
Yeah.
across the street from it came with a garage. I've been there all my life.
Okay.
We're the original owners of that property.
Okay,
So I know exactly what goes on in that.
We
okay,
like the town.
all right.
Yeah, so,
Thank you.
thank you.
You can leave that there.
Okay.
Thank you.
If I could just add another thing too.
Please.
In consideration of my neighbor, we know that if we were to build a garage, we would not need a variance if we move the structure forward closer to Courier Drive, which would certainly impede her view up and down the street.
Right.
And we felt that, requesting this variance for the setback would provide, a more aesthetic positioning of the garage and have a broader appeal in the neighborhood.
Okay.
I'm sorry, you're saying you're setting it back? You're not impeding my view, is that what you're saying?
Hold on one second, please. Could you please have a seat? Ma'am, if you'd like to come back up front, please.
I guess,
I'm not gonna shout
I
back in
know.
front of you. What, don't you come
We're
up,
not shouting
have a
at
seat.
microphone.
That's okay, have a seat.
People in town are listening.
oh,
And so
hi,
therefore
Cal.
you can't,
Hi, Merrimack.
you can't do it in there, you have to do it here.
So-
So,
what
is it
he's
set back
saying-
enough? Is that what I'm guessing,
Yeah,
Laney?
no, up this way.
Up.
Other way. Sorry. We have a certain circumstance doing this. So, what he's saying is that he doesn't even need to be here tonight if he moved the garage further down the driveway. Now, towards
And-
Courier Road.
And closer to the house.
And closer to the house. And in doing that, I guess would impede your view or would be in a kind of an eyesore line sight from your home. In doing what he's doing aesthetically, he's moving it back further from Courier Road so that it's more aesthetic to the
Oh, okay.
neighborhood and doesn't, it is not an eyesore for your.
Right, further back is perfect.
Okay.
I'm happy with that.
Thank you.
Okay, good,
Just
all
wanted
right.
to know where it was.
We're all on the
all right.
same page, great. So, come on back up.
Close public hearing.
All right, is there anybody else that'd like to speak for or against this petition? Outstanding, I'm gonna close the public hearing. That being said, non-conforming lots, I mean, we hear this is, I mean, what, every month from Merrimack? So I personally, I don't see an issue, obviously, with this. I mean, he's
Would you
literally
like a
looking for
motion?
5 feet. So I'm looking for a motion.
I'll move that we grant the variance under section 3.05 of the zoning ordinance to permit the construction of a detached garage 10 feet from the side property line, whereas 15 feet is required. The parcel is located at 25 Sauhegan Drive in the R4 Residential, Elderly Housing Overlay, and Aquifer Conservation District, Tax Map 5C, Lot 528, case number ZBA 2021-24.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made by Lynn, seconded by Ben. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay, 4-0-0. Sir, you are all set.
30 days.
You have 30 days, somebody can come back and appeal this. Otherwise, good luck.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, have a good evening. Next up, Janheim Associates, did I say that right? LLC petitioner, owner, variance under section 3.02, note 6 of the zoning ordinance to permit a 7.5-foot high retaining wall 15 feet from the Daniel Webster Highway right-of-way, whereas 50 feet is required. The parcel is located at 281 Daniel Webster Highway in the C1 General Commercial, I1 Industrial, Aquifer Conservation, Elderly Housing Overlay Districts Tax Map 3D-2, Lot 033, case number ZBA 2021-25. Hi,
Good evening.
how you doing?
Yes, my name is Thomas J. Leonard. I'm a lawyer in Nashua.
Is the,
Is your mic on?
It should be. It's green.
Yep, there you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, there we go, yep,
we were getting flagged from behind.
Sure.
all right.
So I will, and I'm here on behalf of the owners of the property and the applicant.
Okay.
And I will go through my application.
Sure, that would be great, thank you.
So we're here asking for a variance from section 3.02, the table of lot and yard regulations. Minimum required yard setback to the building line to permit 7.5-foot high retaining wall, 15 feet from the edge of the DW highway, where 50 feet is required in a commercial and industrial C1/I1 zone. The property is split property. The front is actually the commercial and the back is the industrial. The narrative that we had was a little confusing on that front.
Okay.
But there's a note in section 3.02 that says, and it's note 6, and it says, a minimum setback of 50 feet from Route 3 DW Highway. 20 feet of this setback shall be a minimum setback for all parking areas, signs, and other site improvements except landscaping and access ways. Such 20 feet minimum setback to provide a buffer zone. I think I probably need to explain a little bit. What we are asking for is a retaining wall. And the zoning department determined that when a retaining wall needs a building permit, it becomes a structure. And that happens when the retaining wall exceeds 3 feet. So the reason we are asking for this is that our retaining wall is in excess of 3 feet. The proposal is 7.5 feet. And as a structure, we then have to comply with the setback, even though we really are, in some senses, landscaping.
So,
So it's not a building, it's just the retaining wall.
so in looking at the pictures here,
Yes.
so that retaining wall looks like, I'm making an assumption, I guess, I don't know for sure, but you're putting that retaining wall in because there's gonna be a parking lot on this side of it, and you have to, you kind of just so there's no, like, avalanche of mud and dirt that comes flying in there on a big rainstorm or something like that?
In some regards, yes. So right now, this is an existing site with an existing site approval.
Right,
And there is a steep slope. What we didn't show in the pictures is the present slope is riprap, and there's a lot of vegetation that's growing, that's not natural vegetation.
So your site is below the road level?
That's correct. There's
Okay.
and it's because of the embankment associated with DW Highway.
Okay. Lynn?
So, yes,
I'm looking at this picture,
that's the new, yes.
and this shows probably a 3 to 3.5 foot retaining wall. And what you're talking about doing is where the black sheeting comes over, is building an additional retaining wall there, which is not going to add parking spaces.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
So, when we discussed the matter with the zoning, with Robert and Casey, we're permitted, without any kind of zoning or planning approval, to do the 3-foot wall, but the 7.5-foot wall is really what we want.
So you're essentially terracing,
No, we're
That
gonna, it's
slope.
gonna be, yes, in some, yes.
because
But
you're
in a
going 3 and then
7.5
a,
It's
thank you.
gonna be all the same wall, but it'll be 7.5
Yeah.
feet if this board thinks it appropriate.
Okay.
So how far above the ground level towards the road is the wall going to project?
It won't be above ground level. It's just a retaining wall, and what'll happen is it'll be grassed, and
Okay.
essentially what happens is the present slope is quite steep with riprap. We intend to eliminate the riprap, flatten out the slope, and be able to landscape it.
So this will be pretty much level from Daniel Webster Highway. So driving by Daniel Webster Highway, you probably wouldn't even see.
More level than it is now, still slightly inclined, but yes, more level than it is now.
Are you gonna have 2 retaining I see
No,
one
one-
retaining
one
wall here.
retaining wall.
So you're just saying, we wanna
That's-
increase the height on this one wall.
Exactly,
Thank you.
yes, just the one retaining wall.
Got it.
And so, the narrative that I have with the application is a lot along those lines that we just discussed. But essentially, the reason, we're kind of caught in an awkward position because of the way the ordinance reads.
Sure.
Setbacks within the definition are really only apply to buildings, but this particular note applies to structures.
Right.
And because ours is a 7.5-foot wall, we have engineered it. It does have all the appropriate certifications. It just doesn't fit into the ordinance in a nice way.
Sure. Do you want,
So I will continue a little bit here.
do you, I was
Pardon
gonna say,
me?
do you want to just go right into the 5 points?
I'm happy to do
Yeah,
that.
and we can, because I mean, if we kind of already, I think we have an understanding of what you're looking to do.
Good.
And we just get into the 5 points and, so get that on record, and then we can discuss a little further.
All right. So the granting of the variance will not be contrary to the public interest. The proposal will have no adverse impact on health, safety, or welfare. There is no significant impact on the zoning scheme or the purposes of zoning. In fact, the changes will make the site safer, function better, and will be more attractive. The public has an interest in preserving the open spaces and the landscaped areas, and that's essentially the purpose of this ordinance. While at the same time allowing for expansion of existing roadways. Since the retaining wall is not a traditional structure, it doesn't interfere with sight lines, it doesn't interfere with the purposes of a buffer, it doesn't interfere with the safety of the operation of the road. In addition, the public will benefit from the removal of invasive plant species, and that's what I referred to in the riprap. There were some knotweed, et cetera.
Any questions on one?
The spirit of the ordinance is observed. The character of the area will only be enhanced, and there's no threat to public health, safety, or welfare. Front yard setbacks are in place to allow for aesthetically pleasing yards, allow for access around buildings, and to keep open the possibility for expansion of a public road. This variance will allow for improved landscaping in the front yard area. And in addition, because this is not a typical structure, and the expansion of the highway remains an option, as a retaining wall can be moved. And I guess what I would also say is, the retaining wall, of course, doesn't interfere with any sight lines, and I think that's an important thing,
It
a
does.
purpose of the setbacks. The purpose of the variance is to permit the higher wall enough to allow and eliminate the riprap slope, which enabled the invasive species. By eliminating the slope, the buffer will look better and be more consistent overall. The spirit of the ordinance will be observed, as there will still be open spaces and areas for expansion of the existing right-of-way.
Any questions on 2? Nope. 3?
Granting the variance will do substantial justice. In New Hampshire, any loss to the individual that is not outweighed by a gain to the general public is an injustice. Here, the property will be upgraded to allow for additional maneuverability. Now, the main purpose of this improvement was because the way the property is presently constructed, the trucks have a back door or a loading station in the back there, but maneuvering the trucks in the winter when there's snow, et cetera, presents a difficulty. This will allow for additional snow storage and maneuverability. So in view of that safety benefit and benefit to the owner, there's no real reason to stop that. In addition, many of the topographic concerns of the land will be solved. If the variance is granted, there will be no harm to the public, as the public will benefit, as we have stated. And denial of the variance would create a harm to the owner, not outweighed by any benefit to the public.
Any questions? Number 4?
Granting the variance will not cause any change in the value of surrounding properties will not be diminished. It's not going to cause any change to the building lot. Adjacent properties will not be adversely impacted in any fashion. No changes to the buildings, et cetera. It just improves the landscaping.
Any questions? 5A, please.
So on the unnecessary hardship, the property is burdened by unique topography which interferes with the reasonable use presently. The slope from the highway is unusual for this particular property, and the current slope has no structure. The current slope with no structure does not provide any opportunity for truck maneuverability. Having a slope between the highway and the paved portion of the driveway provides an area that cannot be easily landscaped and maintained without the use of a retaining wall. If the slope were shallower, the variance might not be necessary, but here, because of the steep nature of the slope, the 7.5 foot retaining wall is necessary. The general purposes of the ordinance is to maintain open spaces, provide access, and improve aesthetics, and improve safety for sight lines and all for highway use. In this particular property, because the required slopes and riprap, a higher wall will likely advance those general purposes rather than a lower wall. There's no relationship between strict application of the rule and accomplishing the purpose of the ordinance. Similarly, we're caught a little bit in the definition of the term structure,
Right.
and I mentioned that.
And what about, could you just read number 2?
Number 2, the use is a reasonable one. Essentially, we're replacing riprap with a real landscaping and a more appropriate wall. The wall is reasonable, it's not unusual, and it doesn't interfere with any of the purposes, and it's very typical in many landscaping and similar operations.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the board?
No.
Okay. Going to open up the public hearing. Is there anybody that'd like to speak in favor of this petition? Is there anybody that'd like to speak against this petition? All right, I'm going to close the public hearing. See, this gentleman is all set. You don't have anything else to add? Discussion from the board. Motions, discussion. Seems pretty straightforward.
I will move that we grant the variance under section 3.02, note 6 of the zoning ordinance to permit a 7.5-foot high retaining wall 15 feet from Daniel Webster Highway right-of-way, whereas 50 feet is required. The parcel is located at 281 Daniel Webster Highway in the C1 General Commercial, I1 Industrial, Aquifer Conservation and Elderly Housing Overlay Districts. Tax map 3D-2, lot 33, case number ZBA 2021-25,
With staff recommendations?
with the staff recommendations outlined in the memo.
All right. Do I have a second? Second. Okay, motion by Lynn, second by Rod. Any further discussion on the matter? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? 4-0-0. You have 30 days, someone can appeal. Otherwise, thank you very much. No worries. Have a good night. Next up is MJ 20 Beacon Street LLC petitioner, owner, variance under section 2.02.7A6 of the zoning ordinance to permit a detached garage 19.9 feet from the edge of the wetland, whereas 40 feet is required. Parcel is located at 20 Beacon Drive in the R1 Residential Bisoils Floodplain and Aquifer Conservation Districts, Tax Map 5C, Lot 617, case number ZBA 2021-26.
Patrick, while I set up, I need to
Yes.
excuse myself for just a minute. I'll be right back.
Sure thing.
Beneficial to have it facing this way.
I saw you come in with that, I thought you had crutches. What, pretty good without those crutches.
Trying to stay off of this much as possible. Does that work for everyone?
Mm-hmm.
Patrick, it's up to you. You can either have the presentation go on without Lynn, or we can have a brief recess.
Actually, thank you for letting me know that. I am, Lynn will be right back. She will be a voting member. She can catch up, but in the effort, in the essence of keeping things moving, so we're not waiting here all night. Why don't you state your name?
Begin.
Yep, and begin.
My name is Jason Bolduc from Meridian Land Services. I am representing MJ 20 Beacon Street,
Okay.
owner of 20 Beacon Drive.
Mhm.
The lot is 1.6 acres. It's lot number 5C617. It's abutted by the Sauhegan River to the south and southwest, and Beacon Drive to the east.
Okay.
To the north and to the south are residential lots. It has an existing 3-bedroom house built in 1974, and based off a plan done for the town of Merrimack in 1975, there's a drainage easement running along the north side.
Okay.
Now, further investigation found that based off of soils, vegetation, and hydrology, it does meet the definition of a wetland. Now, the wetland is entirely located on the parcel, and it does not connect to the Sauhegan River and is used as a drainage for Beacon Drive. There's a catch basin on Beacon Drive with a culvert running into it, and then that fills up for stormwater and then recedes. The underlying soil is sandy, so it disappears pretty quickly.
What's the impact of putting this, I mean, You're talking about something that's gonna affect draining?
Nope. Well, based off of what we have is, there's a 4 to a 6 foot rise to a area that's already maintained. They bought the parcel. There's no natural vegetation between the existing structure and the drainage area, which is where he's looking to do the proposed addition. So there's no maintained buffer or no natural buffer currently existing between the house and the wetland edge. Now, where the main inputs for the wetland, which we've determined to have very little functions and values as far as a wetland, other than drainage purposes for the intent of Beacon Drive. The way we have the proposed addition graded is runoff from the actual addition will diverge away from the easement area, therefore not impacting additional flooding or impacting the use of the easement for its intended purpose.
Do you wanna go into the 5 criteria?
Yes. I would also like to make a change on the actual, the notification says to permit a detached garage.
Mm-hmm.
It is actually attached.
Yeah, that was an error on our part as staff.
Okay,
I just wanted to make that apparent.
okay, so it's an attached garage, not detached.
Correct.
Gotcha.
It's to have 2 bays below with a living area above.
Okay, excellent, thank you.
So granting the variance would not not be contrary to the public interest. The function of the easement / wetland area is to collect stormwater from Beacon Drive. The proposed addition is to be located in an area that is currently maintained landscape and not an undisturbed natural wetland buffer. The grades around the proposed addition are to be such that water coming off of the addition will diverge away from the drainage area. Therefore, there's no anticipated impacts to the wetland or the public interest of which the wetland provides, which is essentially drainage.
Questions? Okay, number 2?
The spirit of the ordinance is observed because the wetland functions as a detention area for stormwater runoff. Stormwater enters the catch basin, then flows through a culvert and daylights within the wetland easement area. The stormwater from Beacon Drive, which includes everything from salts, anything for motorized vehicle, debris, and maintenance from the road, gets washed into this wetland area. By adding the addition, we don't see any additional worse or more impactful inputs to the wetland area.
Okay.
Therefore, they will not impact the existing functions of the wetland area.
Number 3?
Granting,
no. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Casey, does this have to go to planning board?
No, this would not need to go to planning board.
Okay.
continue.
Yeah, please.
Granting the variance would do substantial justice because hereby the ordinance was created after the lot was created and developed, hereby limiting the owner's use of the property with the wetland area entirely located on the subject property and at a relatively low point in the neighborhood. No benefit to the general public will be provided by not allowing relief for the ordinance. Granting the variance would do substantial justice because the proposal will not adversely affect the general public and the use of the easement for its intended purpose.
Questions?
Question.
Yes.
Is the living area going to be above the garage, going to become integral to the main living area?
Correct. Yes,
So
and it
you're
will not be,
talking about an ADU?
it will not be an ADU.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Grant,
Go ahead, sorry.
Granting the variance will not diminish the values of surrounding properties. because it will not affect the functions and the subject easement wetland area. A relief from the ordinance will not increase flooding potential for the property or that of adjacent properties.
Okay,
5A.
please.
5A, and then looking at section A, to prevent the development of structures and other land uses in adjacent to wetlands that would contribute to pollution of surface water and groundwater. The proposal will not contribute to the pollution of the wetland that receives consistent input of stormwater from Beacon Drive. To prevent the destruction and degradation of natural wetlands that provide flood protection, this wetland receives a majority of its inputs from Beacon Drive. The grading around the proposed addition will diverge the water away from the wetland area / easement and will not add additional inputs to the wetland. To prevent unnecessary or excessive expenses to the town, the addition is being proposed in an area that is currently maintained landscape and has no natural buffer protection. The proposal will not create unnecessary or excessive expenses to the town.
And B,
And
proposed use.
proposed use. The proposed use is a reasonable one because there is no anticipated harm to the public, natural resources, or adjacent property values. The proposal meets, to the best of our knowledge, all other state and town regulations. Currently, a shoreline and septic design are being sought because of the location to the Sauhegan River and it being within the shoreline zone. And we're well below 20%, which once you get over 20% requires stormwater. And we also,
So I'm looking at the plans here, because I have a question for you.
yeah,
So I'm looking at the plans, and so there's a driveway that's actually going to be in part of the driveway is also gonna be in that wetlands, in that setback area, right?
correct, to connect to the garage.
Okay. Because I'm looking at it, and just let me finish for a second.
Yep.
So I'm looking at it, and so if we're really only talking about 5.1 feet of the corner of the garage, right? I mean, the majority of it, and is not even in the wetlands. I mean, it's because if I'm looking at this correctly here.
So the pink would be the pink is the 40-foot setback.
That's a 40-foot setback. Okay.
Correct.
I was looking at 25 setback.
25 would be the buffer.
It would be the buffer, and then you're into the buffer. Okay. I
Which
see.
which essentially doesn't exist currently in a natural state. We also presented to the Conservation Commission on July 12th, and their answer was the concession reached was to forward comment to the ZBA indicating no sufficient reservations related to this project. Was their comments. And that was on July 12th.
Go ahead.
I'm not so concerned about where you're putting this, but where's the current leach field?
The current leach field is, I believe, directly, so if you're looking at the proposed one, it would be, where the line's coming down, it would be closer to the house.
See, I'm more concerned with that. I know what happens in flood season to this property. And
The current one, I believe, is much deeper than the one that's proposed. And we're
the one that's
looking,
proposed is closer to the Sauhegan River. No?
no, the existing one is closer to the house than the existing the proposed leach field.
Okay.
So, should I state my name?
Yes, please.
Owner.
Were you sworn in?
Were you sworn in?
No,
Raise your hand.
After.
Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
I do. My name is Ronnie Ganem. I'm the owner of the property. So, the house is right here. The current leach field is actually on this side, up here.
Okay, thank you.
And the one proposed is gonna be obviously all the way down here. So
Better,
it's
that's better.
a lot further
Okay,
from
yep.
the
I just, that's an existing issue in that area, and I know what happens to those homes, so
Yeah.
that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, so we put it in the furthest corner from the wetland
Yeah.
edge and the Sauhegan River.
DES will be happier with that.
And one last thing I just wanted to mention, I know Jason mentioned as well, you know, you know, respectfully, I didn't agree on the wetland portion, but again, I'm not a scientist, you know, I didn't want to go back and forth. It's a man-made wetland, it's not an actual wetland. There was no wetland there until the
Correct.
drainage easement was created.
Okay.
So basically, it's a landscaped, there's grass that basically gets cut. When it rains really hard, it accumulates a little bit of water that goes away in a day, and then I mow the lawn, basically, like, so there's.
But since it's defined as a wetland, we have to treat it
Correct,
that way.
correct, but I just
Okay.
wanted to mention, and, you
No,
know.
like I
that-
said, I was
yeah.
just concerned with the known flooding issues in those areas.
Correct, yeah.
Is the propane tank buried?
No.
No,
Okay.
it's above ground.
That's fine. I'm good.
All right, any other questions from the board? All right, I'm gonna open this up. Is there anybody that'd like to speak in favor of this petition? Did you want to speak in favor of the petition? Okay, you're just waving, okay. Does anybody want to speak against this petition? Okay, I'm gonna close the public hearing. Any discussion items, any thoughts, Lynn?
I had my questions answered. Like I said,
Okay.
that's a known issue down there, so I'm good.
Any proposals?
I'll let somebody else take the turn.
I'd like to make a motion.
Yep.
I'd like to make a motion to grant MJ 20 Beacon Street LLC petitioner owner variance under section 2.02.7A 6 of the zoning ordinance to permit a
An
attached
attached.
garage 19.9 feet from the edge of a wetland, whereas 40 feet is required. The parcel is located at 20 Beacon Drive in the R1 Residential by Soils, Floodplain and Aquifer Conservation Districts. Map 5C, Lot 617, case number ZBA 2021-26.
I'll
Yep.
second.
Second, so motion made by Rod, seconded by Lynn. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Okay, 400. You have 30 days, someone can appeal, otherwise, good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening. Next, Andrew Sullivan petitioner and 598 DW Highway LLC owner, special exception under section 2.02.2C of the zoning ordinance to permit a multifamily residential use in the C1 Limited Commercial District. The parcel is located at 598 Daniel Webster Highway in the C1 Limited Commercial Aquifer Conservation and Elderly Housing Overlay Districts, tax map 6D-1 lot 028, case number ZBA 2021-27. How are we doing this evening, gentlemen?
Good.
Good, excellent.
Good,
Could you
so,
state your names, that'd be great.
Attorney Andy Sullivan, and with me is
Nicholas Key.
Nick Key. Nick Key is the potential purchaser, and it would be the builder developer of the proposal. And just want to briefly go over that. You all have in your packet the plan. As I was my office in Bedford, I was driving down here, look at this site again. You know, right now it has the 2 curb cuts. And so what's proposed is a center aisle parking feeding 4 buildings. They're going to be 2 families, but they're not going to be townhouse style. They're going to be up and down. It's a 2-part application, I guess, tonight. The first is a special exception. The ordinance allows by special exception residential use in the C1 zone, and that's the zone this is in. If that special exception is granted, then we go on to the variance regarding the various dimensional issues. Those dimensional issues we'll talk about later, but basically, in terms of the number of units being requested, the 4 bills and ending up being 24 units, you can see that we're close to some of the setbacks, but the area is not there, okay? It's somewhat similar to, I think it happened at 401 DW Highway last year. There's 12 units put in a small lot off a right, but it's got a 401 address. Here we're looking for 12 buildings. Here we're looking for 4 buildings, 24 units. So again, it will just be straight in the middle, 2 buildings on either side. Each building will have 2 units. Each unit will have 3 bedrooms. When I was coming down here this afternoon and tonight, it reminded me, I've gone down this road 1,000 times. I bet there hasn't been a single-family home built on DW Highway 30, 40 years. Most of the properties, they're either been repurposed, single-family homes like Charlie's and the building next door and up and down there, quite a few of them, or there's been a brand-new commercial activity built, like Tortilla Flats or some other new use. Even the gun shop further up the street used to be a 7-Eleven. I bet you couldn't build anything on that site now because it's too small. So I will get to that as part of the hardship. So the first thing we're going to address tonight is the special exception. And your staff memorandum points out it's a special exception under section 2.02.2C to permit a multifamily use in the C1 limited commercial zone. The parcel is located at 598 Daniel Webster Highway, Aquifer Conservation Elderly Housing Overlay, tax map 6D-1, lot 28. It's case number 2021-27. The address is 598 DW Highway. As again, the staff points out, it's 0.6 acres, and in terms of, I'm not going to read.
Why don't we just go right into the criteria
Yeah,
for the
I'm
special
not going to read the
exception?
entire package. The package is part of the record, but I'll go over the highlights. Again, the first page reviews what we have for frontage. We have 207 instead of 200, but it points out the various deficiencies. So I'm going to jump to, in the background, I just briefly discussed. Again, it's behind or in front of, I guess, a couple houses on Wheeler Street. It's sandwiched in between 2 repurposed residential homes that are now businesses, Charlie's and an office building on the other side. It's across the street from Tortilla Flats. So the C1 zone, and I think this is important, then I'll get into the 5 criteria, says, provided the special exceptions are allowed, provided the ZBA finds all the special condition criteria. Specific site is appropriate location, et cetera, okay? So number 1, specific site is an appropriate location for such a use. Again, the use is for 2-family buildings, eliminating 2 curb cuts, using 1 curb cut center parking. Is an appropriate location for such a use or use in terms of overall community development. In the package, the variance pointed out, the broker opinion made this observation. One, as we all know, there's a severe housing shortage everywhere across the country, not just New Hampshire. In fact, New Hampshire last year had 0.2 vacancy in apartments. It must be less now. I happen to do hundreds and hundreds, or used to do hundreds and hundreds of evictions. Not so much now, but no one's leaving, no one's moving. There's a severe shortage. At the same time, many towns are repurposing or taking down commercial industrials and putting up apartments. I know Manchester's doing that all up and down Elm Street. What the broker opinion pointed out is, in his opinion, the highest and best use is a residential in this lot. It's too small for a profitable commercial enterprise to be built. It's not like there's a building. There's no building on here. The garage is a tear down. So if I look at this site, not too far away up and down, there are other single-family homes. Some are being single-family home use. Many are repurposed. But further on up in either direction, there are apartments or condominiums. And again, if you look at the description of how they describe C1's purpose, is to permit commercial. The predicate in that zone is residential, because it used to be residential. Then over the decades, it's become commercial, and sometime in the past, it was made into the C1 zone. So the site is appropriate location. It's a needed use. It's got the available space to put the use in. And because it's, on the one hand, good for what's being proposed, but too small for a commercial use, it is really not usable for anything else. No one's going to throw a single-family home in there. It's just not going to happen. At the same time, it's too small to put a bigger commercial that would justify the expense. It's it's in front of two residential homes in a residential neighborhood. There are other residentials around. And just not the Democrats so much as the usage shift, we're seeing a vast shift throughout the country where there's just more and more need for housing. This is tailor-made for it, and it's an appropriate use in that overall community development.
Any questions? All right, number 2.
2, the use as developed will not adversely affect the neighborhood. Again, right now, there's no building on there except a tear-down garage. But it's got 2 curb cuts. This is going to be 1 curb cut. The residential use as proposed will actually act as a buffer to the houses in the back in terms of any noise that may be coming from DW Highway. It will not affect Charlie's on one side and the office building, former house on the other side. The back ends of these apartments will be on, abutting that. The front will be in the parking, will be in the center. They will not really notice the cars driving in and out. It's residential like in back. Yes, it's a multifamily rather than single family, but there's sufficient land area and potential for either fencing or arborvitae's buffer to distance itself from the homes in the back. So it's not going to be adversely affect the neighborhood.
Okay. So are you tearing down all the trees that are between that property and the properties in the back?
No,
or is that
not
proposed?
in the rear, I'm not, no.
Sorry, what was that?
No, not at the rear of the property.
Okay, not the rear, okay.
I'm just saying there's also adequate room, if so desired, we could throw
To add.
to add or some for an additional buffer. Okay, there'll be no nuisance or serious hazard to vehicles or pedestrians. From what was there with 2 curb cuts to 1, we're improving the access to and from DW Highway. Additionally, there's a sidewalk that runs in front, and that sidewalk is staying there, okay? So it's not going to harm any pedestrians. There's plenty of safety features for pedestrians if people want to walk to Charlie's. I suppose if waiting for traffic, they could go across to go to Tortilla Flats if they wanted to too, but no different than now. If someone wanted to grab something for lunch, they could go across if they're not going to Charlie's or something else. So the way it's configured, there's going to be no nuisance there, hazard to vehicles or pedestrians.
Okay, hold on one second. Ben, I'm sorry, you had a question?
Well, I'm not sure whether the question applies to item number 8 or item number 9. It's relative to the parking spaces. It's probably item number 9.
It's only 4 items.
No, no.
that's-
Agenda item number 9.
Oh, yeah, no, that would be, that's, yeah,
9.
okay. No, so we're on 8 now, all right. Never mind. Go, continue to 4, please.
Okay. Adequate and appropriate facilities will be provided for the proper operation of the proposed use or uses. Again, if you look at the plan, there's adequate space, there's adequate parking, there's a sidewalk in front, it's being reduced to 1 curb cut. It will be adequate for its intended use.
Okay, I have a question.
No. Yep.
Okay, so you're making the statement of adequate parking. How are you arriving at that, other than your formula? Because 2 visitor spots for, what, 16 units? So if there are more visitors, where will they park their cars?
It's eight units.
Pardon?
It's 8 units.
Okay, 8 units. All right, so you got 2 visitor spots for 8 units. So where do people park if there are more visitors, like on Father's Day,
Pat.
or Mother's Day,
Pat,
or Christmas?
I'm not sure what we had for.
Ben, I believe what you're talking about is a planning board issue. Because they're gonna have to go to the planning board for site plan, which will deal with the parking.
All right,
I think what we're dealing with right now is, can we get an exception, a special exception, to allow this property to be used as residential, whether it's 1
understand,
or
understand.
50?
So,
Can
yeah,
we use it as residential instead of commercial?
then that's purely what we're hearing on. The next one is whether or not,
Right, that's something else.
yeah, that's
But
something
that's all we're
different,
dealing with
and
here.
that's, we can address
okay.
that at that time, so.
Thank you.
And this is a make, so, right, so even if all this is granted tonight, we still have to go to the planning board.
Correct.
And they would also address those type of issues.
So all we're talking about at this very moment is whether or not to permit the multifamily residence within
Special
that
exception.
zoning area. So
Not even multifamily. All we're saying is
residential.
to
Residential,
permit residential, which could be a single family.
which could be a single,
Yep.
just a residential in that spot.
Correct.
I keep referring to what's being proposed, because obviously that's what's being
Yep.
proposed, but that
Thank
is
you
correct.
for the clarification, Lou.
Yep.
Is there anything else you'd like to add before I open up the public hearing?
No.
Okay. Is there anybody here that'd like to speak in favor of this petition? Is there anybody that'd like to speak against this petition? If gentlemen could take a seat to the side and.
And this is speaking to just
I'll
making
give it to-
this.
yeah, I'll give it to
Okay.
that. Please come on down. So, and to Lynn's point, this is just speaking about whether or not you could put any type of residential building at that space. Not, doesn't matter if it's a 8-unit condo or a single-family home. This is just, that's all we're talking about at this point, okay? So if you could just state your name.
My name is Chuck Mower.
I think your
Is
mic's
this on?
Yeah, I think it's on, yeah.
I live at 4 Depot Street.
Yep.
I've heard a very large and flowery amount of rhetoric
Okay.
for something that has nothing to do with whether or not it's a residential special exception. So we have been sold quite a bit of goods here and are now just saying essentially, well, it's just a special exception we're looking for. So it could be a residence, because after all, there's lots of residents along Route 3, historically residential along Route 3. But we all know that there's more to it than that.
That's what the next one's about.
There's much more to it than that. So I can't limit my opposition to whether or not they should receive a special exception for the possibility of a residential use, because they already have a well-formed plan and intended use, which far exceeds the community standards that we have in Reeds Ferry. I have lived there all of my life. I have seen it change a great deal. I am not opposed to change, but I have seen far too often how projects are shoehorned in to generate as much profit as possible for a petitioner, with little regard to the overall characteristic of a small village that is fading into history in a larger town. We are 4 villages and 1 town. And the people of Reeds Ferry, I believe, and I believe I'm speaking for them this evening, like to maintain the character to the extent they can of the little historic village that it once was and still in some part pretends to be. And so, yes, I am opposed to a special exception in regards to the obvious intended plans of the petitioner to move forward with what I think is a catastrophic impoverishment of the way we live in Reeds Ferry presently.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak against the petition? By all means.
So, a couple
Could you,
concerns that we have.
could you sta-
My
could
name
you-
is David Bradish. I live at 5 Wheeler Street.
Excellent.
We abut this particular property. We've lived at Wheeler Street for about 18 years now. And we do have a concern with just like the previous gentleman spoke, we do have a concern with the use of the property to begin with. And we do think it'll have significant impact on the neighborhood. It does feel to me and us that this is a development that is already decided, and it's a profit-making institution. That's what it sounds like to me. They want to squeeze as much as they can into a small lot. And if you look at the setbacks that they're asking for, and I know maybe this is not part of this particular conversation, but the setbacks would significantly impact the neighborhood and us directly as property owners, really directly. It would impact the value of our property. It would impact the use of our property all the way around. And I do think it would have some significant impact on the neighborhood as well. This is a big concern, and I value the board's opinion, and I hope you guys really evaluate this before you actually vote, because it is a concern for us.
So I do have a question for you. If you had a choice between a residential property, whether it be one house or multiple units, or say a commercial property like a used car building or a small manufacturing shop, what would you prefer?
So I think, not to roundabout answer the
Yep.
question, but I think we need to stick to what the intent of the property was to begin with. And
Which
the
is
intent
commercial.
the intent was limited commercial. So limited commercial is something limited,
Yeah.
right? This would be residential, yes, but I wouldn't consider this limited residential. So that's a
enough.
big concern for us,
Fair enough.
right? Does that answer your question?
That does. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else that would like to speak against the petition? By all means, please.
My name is Justin Dunley at 7 Wheeler, right next to this folk right here. And obviously I am against this for several different reasons. I do have some photos that I would like to share with you guys.
Sure.
I'll actually bring them.
Actually, I'm sorry, I apologize, I misunderstood what you said. Can't take any new evidence in. We can't take any new evidence in at the time of a meeting, but if you'd like to describe them, you're more than willing to, please.
Okay. Yeah, so this is a photo that I have right here. I know you can't take any new evidence here, but this is my property line right back here. And I know that they said something about trees. Well, clearly these are all trees right here, so those would definitely be removed. So that is a concern of mine right there.
Okay.
We're dealing with the next article. Dealing with the next article, not this one.
The lawyer, at the beginning of his statement, verbatim said the area is not there. So clearly their intent, there's not enough room for what they're trying to do. The noise is another concern of mine with the construction, whereas, the property line is right there. If I go out on my deck, it's literally right there. The construction site will be right there. So again, that's very concerning. And then the depreciation and value of houses, that's another concern of mine. Again, we've been there over 2.5 years, and when I go out on my deck, I look at these trees, the shade, and it's just, I don't think it would be smart for the town to allow this to go up, so.
So now I know, I kind of understand exactly what you're saying, and I kind of saw that when I was looking at the pictures as well. And that's why I had asked them if they were going to be removing the trees in the back. And I said that they weren't, but I
would definitely disagree with that 100%.
All right, well, and
Those trees would have to be removed if they're trying to do what they're talking about.
Okay,
I know that for sure.
okay, excellent, okay, thank you very much. Is there anybody else that'd like to speak against violence? Come on up.
Hello, my name's Jessica Dunley. I live at 7 Wheeler Street as well. I think in this case, we were talking about if a residential house should be built there, and I do disagree with that. I think that the original layout was the limited commercial. That's what we all expected when purchasing our homes. I bought my home brand new 2.5 years ago. I love my home, and this is what I was expecting, the privacy that I have right now and not having people up at 2 o'clock in the morning with their windows staring into mine. I don't have to worry about that with the building, with the commercial building. And I'm really concerned with my privacy and what I hold true in my neighborhood and what I feel that is right. And I don't agree with this being residential. Am I supposed to be speaking on the variance? Because I have a lot more to say in regards to the variance.
This would be in regards to the variant, this would be in regards to the special exception. We haven't gotten to the variance, that's next if we go that far, but.
I strongly disagree with the special exception. I feel that it will strongly impede mine and my neighbors' lives, and I hope that you guys see that.
Thank you. Just a thought here. Was this the place that was this the property that was supposed to be the dog? Okay, it was a different one. All right. Is there anybody else who wants to speak against this petition? Come on up.
Hi, my name is Ginny Zong. I had a property right next to is the 594 Danny Webster Highway. The big concern is about the tree, what he's talking about. So it's my land with that property on the line. It has 3 tree, very big tree, but I don't know who is mine, but one is on my property, and the other 2 is on the line. I was big concern if they doing the construction, because my house is very old. The foundation is not as good as the before. So because I'm concerned about they doing the foundation, because they moving in about like, they're thinking like 50 feet, they want to be like 22.5 feet. So to the line, right? Because I'm big concerned that we not, as they had to respond any problem for my property to the house.
Okay, you're speaking a little more on the variance. This is not based on that. I understand part of what you're saying as far as the property, and this is more about the use of the property as opposed to where as opposed to what they're looking for as far as distance to property lines, which is the next variance. This one is more about whether or not they can utilize this for a residential space.
So I don't care what they build in right next to it. So I just concerned about the tree, same thing. Because all my neighbor, they all have tree. I don't have any tree, only have one in the back. And then I have one house in Manchester. One of my trees fell down to my neighbor. And then I cut all the tree down because I big concern to hitting people roof, If they move the building through
Right.
us.
Again, you're talking, I understand what you're saying, but you're referring to that doesn't have any relation to this, because we're not talking about building placement at the moment.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
This I'm concerned.
That would be the next one.
Next one, okay.
Yes, Lynn, go ahead.
Maybe to help clarify, and I know this is, having both of these items on the agenda tonight makes it difficult to separate them. But I've heard a couple of comments tonight about construction. Whether you're building a residential home or you're building a commercial facility, you're going to have construction.
Right.
So that really isn't related to this. This is more a matter of whether you want the facility, the building to be residential or you want it to be commercial. The construction has no bearing on this right
okay.
now, okay? I know it's hard to separate the two because there is a proposal here. But what we're talking about right now is, do we want to allow a residence, whether it's one or multiple, on this property versus requiring it to be commercial? Does that help?
Okay. Let me tell you.
Okay.
佢而家就係話係 commercial 定係住人嘅？你係同意住人啊，定係做生意？ Yeah, we doesn't care about
Okay.
that.
Should this pass, then we will get into the next item and discuss the building and the setbacks and stuff.
Oh, okay. Got you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Is there anybody else that'd like to speak against this petition? Okay. If you would like to come up here and have a rebuttal?
Very brief response. Hopefully it's brief. Of course, that's a misnomer when we're talking about attorneys. The original neighborhood was residential 100 years ago. It was not commercial. It's evolved in commercial over the years as residential has backed out. It's symptomatic of small towns everywhere. But what we're seeing now is the reverse across the country, where large people aren't going to offices. Amazon is dwarfing any retail type thing, and clearly that small lot will not support an industrial-type building. So what we're talking about, we have to look, I guess, the bell curve. This is a residential opportunity in a former residential neighborhood, and with the special exception, it is allowed. It's not a variance to get a residence in here. It's by special exception, so it's contemplated by the zoning ordinance. And so, again, all those things with construction, trees, et cetera, next go-around, or the planning board. But is this lot reducing 2 curb cuts into 1 for, in a residential, for residential use, when there are residential uses, behind it and up and down the street, sparse as it may be, and there are multifamilies though, more, matter of fact, I would suggest that any residential uses that have been built on this road have been multifamilies over the last 20 to 30 years. And so I think it is consistent with the community and is proper for the use of that property as it's situated, sidewalk, area, et cetera. So.
Thank you. You can stay. All right, unless there's no other comment from the public, I'm going to close the public hearing. And sir, did you make one more comment? I'm sorry. Yeah, if you may, go ahead.
The question before you, you have focused the charge on, because residential is an acceptable use if it was an exception to what is an established limited commercial district. As if nothing else comes into play. And quite frankly, I'm offended by the presenter, because he brings the entire country into play. Amazon, residential need across the country. The lot is too expensive, apparently, to put a house on. My goodness, how many odd parcels of land are landlocked or have other covenants or restrictions or whatever that defy variances and special exceptions and so forth. We've seen lots of people in that position before. This is a position of choice that we have here. And it is about our community, not Amazon, not the rest of the country, not the presenter's community. He's representing a client. I don't know where the client lives. He doesn't live in Reed's Ferry. I know that. I'm here to defend the village of Reed's Ferry, 1/4 of the town of Merrimack. And its established character over time is historic. And when we tear down a building that has lent itself to the identity of this community and then replace it with a never needs maintenance condo monstrosity, we foreclose on everything that has happened in that village. All the things that those people have contributed to and lived by as a village, whether it was ancient, whether it was historic, or whether it's modern. We, the people of Reed's Ferry, are asking you not to foreclose on us. That's what we're asking for. Because you can stop it right now, or we can continue on. And I guarantee you that I will marshal all the forces I can of Reed's Ferry to oppose an inappropriate gouging of our village.
Anybody else? Okay. Close the public hearing. Deliberations of the board?
I'm going to try and collect this into one thing. I believe, as Mr. Mauer stated, the village of Reed's Ferry is a village It's residential. What was on this property originally was a residence. I think that's appropriate in there. I would much rather see a residential use on this property. I'm not discussing the other proposal, I'm just saying, I believe I would rather see a residential use on this piece of property than a commercial or anything else. We can deal with the other proposal at another time, but keeping to the, can't think of the word I want, I'm getting old. Just the feeling of the community. I would rather see that property used as a residential property than a commercial property. And therefore, I will make a motion as such.
Rod, any question? Ben?
Yeah, I have a question. If we approve this tonight, we vote on the next item. If that doesn't get approved, it doesn't go to the planning board, right?
Correct.
It only goes to the planning board if we approve both.
Correct.
Okay.
But if we approve this, then that means somebody else could bring forward another proposal for some type of residential use.
Sure.
They can also come forward without our permission with a commercial use, correct?
Yes.
Because they wouldn't-
Correct.
Right.
Well, yeah, that's
Yeah.
what it's currently.
Limited commercial.
That's right.
Does the
Right.
C1 zone.
Right.
I don't, I understand where you're coming from, Lynn. I don't agree with I don't agree with number 4. Adequate and appropriate facilities will be provided for the proper operation of the proposed use or uses. I don't agree with what's proposed. And I realize that that's part of a variance to come, but it is in this petition as far as what they're proposing for the residential space.
But we're not dealing with what they're proposing for the residential space.
Right,
We're
but
only
it's
saying,
worded in the criteria. And if it's worded in the criteria, my understanding is, if you don't, I agree with that. Number 4, adequate and appropriate facilities will be provided for the proper operation of proposed use or uses. The proposed 8 residential units in the 4 buildings served by the requisite parking, I don't agree with that.
I don't either, but that's not part of what we're voting on with this special exception.
But it is part of the special exception.
No, it isn't.
Okay.
I don't believe it is. I believe that's part of the background that comes in through it, but I don't believe it's part of the special exception. We are in no way saying that this can be an 8-unit proposal. I
Right.
believe that's the next agenda item. All we're saying is this property can be used as residential.
Right, but the chairman makes a valid point, and that is that if it's in the justification for the special exception, it implies we're supporting 8 units on that site.
I disagree.
I believe we're only talking about going from commercial to residential. And
I believe that's exactly what we were talking about, and in the spirit of the special exception. I believe that you're correct, that, we're talking about looking at allowing a residential there. However, if it said adequate and appropriate facilities will be provided for the proper operation of the proposed use or uses for a residential building, boom, then that's different than saying a proposed 8 residential units. And if I'm being too literal, I'm being too literal, but that's the way that I read it.
Casey, is there a way of phrasing the motion to eliminate the proposal that's in the following?
I think the board's making this more complicated than it is.
That's what
It's
I think.
Yeah, just focus on the fact that what is being proposed with this special exception is simply a residential use in terms of the number of units and density. That's all related with the variance in the next public hearing.
That's how I'm
Yep.
reading it.
Yep.
Okay,
I wouldn't get too caught up in that.
all right.
I will move that we grant the special exception under section 2.02.2C of the zoning ordinance to permit a, now here's where we come into the problem.
See?
All right, here's a question for you, Casey. Where it says multifamily residential, can we make a motion that eliminates the word multifamily?
Yeah, you can just leave it vague and just say residential.
Okay. To permit a residential use in the C1 Limited Commercial District. The parcel is located at 598 Daniel Webster Highway in the C1 Limited Commercial Aquifer Conservation and Elderly Housing Overlay Districts. Tax map 6D-1, lot 028, case number ZBA 2021-27.
Do I have a second?
Second.
So motion made by Lynn, seconded by Rod. And this is voting on just allowing a residence, not multifamily, not anything, just saying that a residence could be built there.
It can be built as residential.
Whether it's
That's
a
it.
single-family home or whether it's a.
We don't care. We're just saying residence.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? There's no abstention.
No abstention?
No abstention. So if
I'll
you're,
oppose.
if you oppose?
Yeah.
So 3, 1, 0. The next one is regarding
Here's where we get into the nitty-gritty.
That's the density one, that's the one. All right, Andrew Sullivan, petitioner, and 598 DW Highway LLC owner, variance under section 3.05 of the zoning ordinance to permit construction of 8 multi-family units with a minimum lot area of 26,136 square feet, whereas 320,000 square feet is required, a minimum lot depth of 125 feet, whereas 200 feet is required, a front setback of 25 feet, whereas 50 feet is required, and a rear setback of 22.5 feet, whereas 40 feet is required. The parcel is located at the 598 Daniel Webster Highway in the C1 Limited Commercial Aquifer Conservation Elderly Housing Overlay Districts, tax map 6D-1, lot 2028, case number ZBA 2021-28. Gentlemen?
Good evening. Again, my package is part of the record already submitted, and I make reference to the previous special exception dialogue as applicable for descriptions of the site, and that will be submitted together with this without repeating it. By reference in the record, it's there. I make one other point that the staff report, and we'll get into as part of the hardship, the site is 0.6 acres, which would calculate a 0 units being permitted. So no matter how you slice it for a residential use, which has just been determined to be a reasonable use by special exception, can't do anything unless there's a variance. So we're here no matter what as a variance for a residential use. In terms of, so I'm just going to jump right to the criteria. The granting the variance would not be contrary to public interest or the spirit of the ordinance. I point out that the requirement that a variance not be contrary to public interest is related to the requirement is consistent with.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Can you hold that until I open the public discussion, please?
It's an important point of order.
All right.
He has skipped a presentation that is essential to describing the criteria that he's responding to. We have no way of knowing
Okay, I will.
how that is in context to his presentation that he just skipped over as if it's not important to us.
Thank you very much for the point. If you would please give the presentation of what was being proposed.
I have no problem with that, as
Thank you
again,
very much.
I referenced it, but I'll go over it again. So what is being proposed in a submitted plan on this site on 0.6 acres? Whoops.
Yep. Yep.
What?
Is 4 buildings accessed by a central drive in and out with parking, 18 parking spaces. That 18 parking spaces was calculated on how many units we have. So each building is an up and down two-family, so it's not a side-by-side, up and down. Each unit, each apartment will have 3 bedrooms. So each building therefore would have 6 bedrooms. There's 4 buildings, that would be 4 times 6, 24 bedrooms in this 8-building, 8 building,
4 buildings, 8 units.
4 building, 8 unit property, okay? Various dimensionals, aspects are noted on the plan, 25-foot frontage. The highway parking setback is 20 feet. That is met. We have a 24-foot aisle going in and out, adequate for driveways going, ingress and egress at the same time. But we don't have a full side setback, rear setback, and obviously the total area being 0.6 acres is less than what's required for this number of units. That's the layout of the project. It's situated in front of Wheeler Street where it abuts 2 residential properties. On either side of it, Charlie's and an office building are both in repurposed former residential properties. Across the street is Tortilla Flat and another commercial use on the corner, on the northern corner, again in a repurposed building. So what is proposed on this empty lot, it's not quite empty, there's a garage, it's going to be a tear down, is to, instead of putting back a commercial use, when keeping the 2 curb cuts and ripping down all the trees, all of which could be done without coming here, is to maintain as much trees as possible with the potential of more buffer trees going as a ZBA or plan board would require, to put a very nice looking 4-building residential property in this zone. Because the special exception was granted, the residential zone is now allowed. It is not a variance issue, it is allowed. The issue of the day is exactly what will be permitted in terms of the residential use, and that's where we'll get into the criteria. I point out on number 1, granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest or the spirit of ordinance. I make reference to Chester Rod and Gun Club. It says the requirement, this is a holding of the Supreme Court in New Hampshire, that the requirement that the variance not be contrary to public interest is related to the requirement that it be consistent with the spirit of the ordinance. Chester stated that the criteria whether the variance is contrary to the public interest or would injure the public rights of others should be construed with whether the variance is consistent with the spirit of the ordinance. So this first criteria talks about, in effect, whether it's contrary to public spirit. If it's not, it's deemed to be consistent with the spirit of the ordinance. But also, Chester says, to be contrary to public interest or injurious to the public rights, the variance must unduly and in a marked degree conflict with the basic zoning objectives. So what's the basic zoning objective of C1? It reads to permit commercial in this zone. It doesn't say to permit residential. It says to permit commercial in this zone. And it talks about the zone being usually on the frontage with nice residential areas in the back, et cetera. It describes exactly what we have here. So the question before the board is, does the proposal in an unduly and a marked degree conflict with that purpose of the C1 zone? I maintain it doesn't, and therefore it would not be contrary to public interest, and it would be consistent with the spirit of the ordinance. Although the lot area, depth, and front and back setback requirements are not met, because this lot abuts a residential neighborhood in the rear, and both its commercial butters in the north and south are repurposed residential homes, the proposed use of this lot will not be contrary to the public interest. That is, the proposed use of a multifamily in now what we know to be an allowed residential use on the lot would not be contrary to public interest and would be consistent with the spirit and ordinance as applied to this C1 zoning lot. It would not, granting the variance would not unduly and in a marked degree conflict with the ordinance such that it violates the ordinance's basic zoning objectives, because it will be in a neighborhood transitioning from residential to commercial use on small lots. The transition's been going on for 30, 40, 50 years, but the majority in that Reed's Ferry neighborhood commercial uses in the frontage are repurposed residential homes. And this is going back because it's a transitional neighborhood. It is not a set-in-stone neighborhood. Consequently, just because it lacks the depths, certain setback and size cannot in and of itself be sufficient grounds to violate the ordinance basic zone objectives. I mentioned Metzger v. Town of Brentwood. There, the court observed that on the basis, usually dimensional requirements are usually justified on the basis they are a method of determining lot size to prevent overcrowding and also safety. Okay, here, the buildings fit nicely with their intended use, and that is an apartment building. I'm going to use the word adequate. That does not mean it meets the zoning criteria, but it's adequate for its proposed use, both in the back and the rear setbacks, in the front, and the parking is adequate. I know there's maybe a discussion on that. Okay. Emergency vehicles can certainly access that. It's right off the road. The driveway is 24 feet. There's plenty of interior corridor between the parking area for emergency vehicles to get in. So the size alone is not a detriment to public safety, both in terms of emergency vehicles as access, both in terms of cars coming and going. And again, I pointed out earlier, but I'll repeat again, this lot has a sidewalk coming down the front. So there's safety for the public using the lot, safety for the people that will be living there, et cetera. So again, I bring those out because those criteria show that the use will not in unduly and marked degree conflict with the ordinance such that it violates the ordinance basic zoning objectives of health, safety, and welfare.
Can you hold on a second? Is there any questions from the board regarding these? I know we've gone through a couple of the criteria at this point. It's kind of all melded into one here. So is there any questions from the board at this point on any of the criteria so far? Ben?
No, I have no questions.
Not yet? Okay,
No.
thank you.
So despite its size, it does not appear to be any justification to strictly apply the dimensional requirements to this lot, because it's unnecessary to accomplish a legitimate public purpose. And the gain to the public is slight, but the harm to the property owner is great. Again, under this criteria, the gain to the public meaning whether it's a commercial use, a single-family home, or a multifamily home, denying this, there's going to be no really gain to the public, because it's still going to be, someday, there's going to be a use in that, and it's going to come off the road, onto the road, et cetera. And as the broker's opinion pointed out, and I alluded to the last time, is that the broker's opinion, and he gave his reasons, and he did talk about the larger community at large, the larger problem in the country, et cetera. But his opinion is, this is the highest and best use for this property, and to deny that use would be a detrimental loss to the owner. It would not alter the essential character of the neighborhood, and we'll stop here. What's the essential character of the neighborhood? The essential character of the neighborhood is a former residential transitioning to commercial, mostly in repurposed residential buildings. This will be a multifamily, no question about it, okay? But it's still in a residential transition neighborhood, and it was just, by the special exception, residential is allowed. So it is not going to diminish the value of the neighborhood, and that's what the broker's opinion indicated. I'll just stop right there. It will not diminish the property value in the neighborhood. If anything, I can make my own opinion, is adding more people to the neighborhood. That's always a good thing, okay? Those people will frequent and patronize the various commercial buildings around. So it will be a boon economically to the neighborhood to have more people there. Next one, by granting the variance, substantial justice will be done, okay? I point out this is a treatise in New Hampshire law, Lawful New Hampshire Practice Land Use, Says the only guiding rule on this factor is that any loss to the individual that is not outweighed by gain to the general public is an injustice. So what would the gain to the public be by denying this variance? Okay, it's a residential use. We've pointed out that it's not going to impact in a negative way any property values. It's not by a professional opinion. It's pointed out that it will add economic vitality to the neighborhood by adding more people. Okay? By denying it, it pigeonholes it into perhaps a use that no one will ever build. It could remain vacant for a while, or maybe it's a tiny little, I don't know exactly what would be there, a tiny little commercial building, but there's a cost factor. If it was a building already there, probably someone would come by to get some other use for it. But there's not a building there. You have an empty lot in this zone, and unless some use is allowed that is economically feasible, it's going to sit there an empty lot. So denying it doesn't really give any appreciable gain to the public, but it certainly ends up being a loss to the owner. And that would be contrary to substantial justice. Granting it would give substantial justice.
Any questions before unnecessary hardship?
What was there before? One single-family residence, right?
Is
I
don't know.
No, it was an
A brick
attorney's
house.
office.
What?
It was an attorney's office.
Attorney's office?
Is that George Michael's building?
It was a house.
Originally, it was a house,
Yeah,
but it was
that's my
converted
point.
to a
It was being
commercial.
used as a attorney's office.
Yes.
But the structure was a house.
It was a house,
Correct.
correct.
It was a house, yes.
That's my point. So why was the house torn down?
Structural issues.
Hmm?
Structural issues.
Well, you repair the structure.
Who currently owns the property?
The 598 DW Highway LLC.
So they have bought it.
They bought it, right?
Okay.
Unnecessary hardship?
Special circumstance exists that distinguish this property from other properties. Residential use, point 6 is pointed out by our staff, need a variance no matter what. That in and of itself, to pursue a residential use of this property is a hardship that can't be addressed without a variance. Also, it has no house on it. You look up and down that street for a lot that size, you're not gonna find another lot that size without a house on it. It's unique in that regard. It's too small to build a new commercial structure that will generate an adequate return, and it's too expensive just to build one single-family home. It's a unique property because of the cost to build and because of its size. It can only do something with a variance, and to preempt an obvious observation, yes, it's being proposed so that someone can make money. Okay, anybody doing anything on that strip is doing something to make money on real estate. My client believes this is what is minimally necessary to make it worthwhile to do something on that lot. Otherwise, it may just sit there. And so consequently, the strict application is so many special circumstances that are unique on this lot. There's no one else around that like it. In terms of a reasonable use, what's a reasonable use in zoning and variance land? It's an allowed use. This is an allowed use. Residential, we just determined, is an allowed use. Is this number of buildings, this number of units, this number of bedrooms an allowed use? Okay, residential is the allowed use. It's reasonable. We believe it's reasonable. We've submitted a plan. It fits nicely. It will look nice. The adequate parking, the safety for the occupants, for visitors, and it's accessible to a emergency purpose. So it is a reasonable use. And so consequently, there's no fair and substantial relationship from the general public purpose of applying these dimensional requirements to this particular application of the property. And so we have the hardship. So in sum, we've established it's met all the criteria. and we ask that the variance be granted or open to questions.
Any questions from the board? Comments from the board?
Not yet.
I'll hold mine as well. All right. Have a seat over there if you'd like. I'm gonna ask, is there anybody here who wants to speak in favor? Okay, who would like to go first? By all means, go ahead.
Okay. Again, Dave Bradish from 5 Wheeler Street.
Yep.
Abutting the property in question. I heard a couple of things as the gentleman was asking for the variances, and one of the things I heard, again, and what we are discussing here tonight, is 8 3-bedroom apartments.
Yeah.
So 8 3-bedroom apartments is significantly different than a single-family home, which is what I live in, which is what my neighbors live in, which is what most of the neighborhood consists of, okay? I do think, and we talked a little bit earlier about parking, we do have noise concerns, we do have parking concerns, we do have vegetation concerns. I have, and my neighbors also, have even sunlight concerns. If this thing gets put in, I might not even see the sun in my backyard. Now, that may not make a difference to a lot of folks here. I barely see the sun in my front yard. It definitely is a significant impact on the neighborhood, on the property. Again, when we talk about 24 people, the previous use, right, the first use was a residence. I understand that. That's perfectly fine. I get that. But it was converted to a law office. Ever since I had been there, it was either a law office or it was not being used. And I'm not saying not use the property, not develop the property. I'm saying that that law office did not bring up the significant amount of concerns that this particular property is bringing to all of our attentions tonight, okay? Again, a law office operates Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 maybe? Maybe some exceptions thereof. If you talk 8 3-bedroom apartments, you have 24 people at a minimum, right? 3-bedroom. That's an awful lot of people we're squeezing into a small amount of space. Again, noise concerns, lighting concerns, all kinds of concerns are brought up right in front of this board and in front of everybody who's sitting here today. I don't think I can say it any better than, when he's talking for it, I don't even, just thinking about what that's gonna do to the neighborhood is tremendously damaging. So I think that really has to be a consideration for this board for how we want Merrimack to develop. Again, that's kind of zoning, that's what we're talking about. And the variances do directly impact me. The gentleman earlier stated, and I didn't talk about trees, but now we can talk about trees. I have multiple trees on my property. And there are multiple trees that are on the other side of the property as well. And yes, those would need to be removed if they were gonna do this. And yeah, I don't know where they're gonna park their cars. I don't know where children are gonna play, and I have no problem with children. I have a child of my own. He's 20 years old now, but he grew up in the house, and he enjoyed the yard. If this gets built, well, so the other thing I think of is if I wanted a pool or I wanted a garage that wasn't attached to the house, would it be as easy to come to this board and say, oh, well, I'd like to put it about 5 feet away from the neighboring property. Is that okay? And I think there'd be a different consideration here. I'm not asking the people to have a financial concern about this. They should have considered that when they purchased the property and decided to tear it down. There are impacts to your decisions that you make. When I bought my property, I didn't want to make it a 3-story residence that's gonna house multiple people. I wanted it to live for my family, and I think Merrimack is a good place to live and a great community and great people around, and we need to keep that flavor alive in Merrimack. That's about all I have to say with this, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Just so you know, if you do want to put a pool in, you can get a variance, and you could probably go through, so.
5 feet away or 2 feet away.
You'd be surprised, you'd still, it's work. Well, you never know.
No preconceived decisions here.
Anybody else like to speak? Ma'am?
Hello, my name's
Hi.
Jessica Dunley. I live at 7 Wheeler Street. the house directly behind the property. Since we're talking about the variance, this variance is in direct correlation with multifamily units and everything that comes with that. That includes the increased traffic with a very high trafficy area, especially around 5 p.m. and commute times, which can be dangerous when you have additional cars on the road, especially that many cars that would add. The main reason that I have as an issue for me is that my privacy is gonna be removed, and I'm really concerned. My house is less than 20 feet from the property line. It is backed up, it's right there. So when you're taking this variance and you're taking the 40 feet, the legal amount right now, and you're shrinking that, my house is now backed up against this other house that's towering over mine. So it's towering over mine, my windows are gonna be aligned with their second floor, looking into my bedroom right there, less than 40 feet from my direct house. And the variance, I don't have that 40-foot variance on my side as a buffer, and I'm concerned for my privacy. I just got married in March, I'm trying to start a family, have children, and all of these people and everything that this apartment or residential complex is gonna bring is a severe detriment to my family, and I'm really concerned. And I'd love to raise my family in this neighborhood and be a Merrimack resident and live in this house for life, and I'm really concerned that this is gonna change things for me, and I hope you'll take that into consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else like to make a comment?
It's very difficult for people that lead relatively ordinary lives. Just Joe Lunch Bucket, you know, we get up in the morning, we go to work, we come home, we have supper, we hug the kids. You know, we have a little backyard barbecue or whatever. And we coalesce around a little community, whether that's a street or a neighborhood or a cul-de-sac or whatever. Nevertheless, we lead relatively ordinary lives. And we constantly having people come to our community to participate and to give and to engage and to advance our community. We also have people that come to our community to exploit. And they are usually represented by Philadelphia lawyers that have far more skills in advancing noble rhetoric about how wonderful it is for the public without them actually having spoken to us, the public, or understanding how we live. We're proud of who we are. We're proud of our little community. And we like people that come and bring us something. There's ample opportunity to do that by virtue of your special exception, but it's not likely that that's what this presenter has in mind, and it made that exceptionally clear. And you can understand why we object to that. Now you might say, for instance, well, it's an emotional objection. These people are just not in my backyard people. And we dismiss them as NIMBYs. But of course, we're not. We're people that have enjoyed living where we are and interacting with the various businesses and so forth that are in our neighborhoods. And we speak to each other, and we live a relatively nice life, all things considered, until something dramatic comes along that wants to interrupt that. And how do we know that it's dramatic? We know it's dramatic from the presentation that was made by a Philadelphia lawyer. Gosh, we have one of the worst traffic problems in town, right there at the corner of Depot Street and Harris Ave. A mere 75 feet maybe from this property? We have stagnation from the light at Walgreens. It backs things up all the way down to Shaw's at least twice a day. And we're going to stick 8 residential units with 16 cars and visitors onto a little postage stamp of land, which under normal circumstances of our ordinances, the zoning ordinances that actually guide reasonable and productive development in town, those ordinances call for a parcel 12 times bigger than this particular parcel. 12 times bigger. They've got 26,000 square feet. The rules and regulations that everybody else plays by calls for 320,000 square feet. That's not a variance. That just isn't a variance. In and of itself, it's not a variance. It can't be construed as anything other than an abuse of our zoning processes, our zoning regulations, our planning activities, our master plan, all of those things. And they nibble around. My goodness, how many exceptions are they looking for? They need an exception to everything, because everything about this parcel is non-conforming for them to make any amount of money, although they just purchased it. I mean, I don't know why. I'm probably different. Why would I purchase a property that I knew I couldn't do anything with unless everybody gave away everything they ever had? And that's basically what it amounts to. I have no problem with a limited commercial use of the property. I have no problem with a residential use of the property. I have a problem with this proposal. That's what I have a problem with. One that violates and asks us to violate all of the planning that we have worked so hard for in this community. I remember when we didn't have zoning. I remember what happened. I remember every con man that's come to this community over the last 50 years and taken advantage of us. And we said, oh, well, we're not going to do that again. And then it happens again and again and again. And I think with this particular proposal, it's easy to see it's asking us to go a bridge too far in being reasonably understanding their interest in making money. I'm obviously opposed to it. I'm opposed to it for the reason that all these people are. And I think any reasonable individual has to say, boy, oh my God, we're not going to go through this again. I can cite so many of those particular things that we had to fight so hard. We had to fight the government with HUD. We had to fight applied chemical technology, trying to put industrial waste in our town. We have to fight Saint-Gobain with PFAS. We have to fight all these people that just want to extract from us our simple way of living in comfort. And I'm just fed up with it.
Okay. Anybody else like to speak against this petition? All right. Do you have any final comments?
It's a bit of a question.
Sure.
Okay. I heard and respect the comments of opposition. But we're in a situation where it's an either or as opposed to what about a modification. So I present this to you.
Okay.
If we modified the application to reduce it to 2 buildings, 2 units apiece, we would meet the side setbacks, we would meet the front setback, and we would meet the rear setback. We just would not meet the lot size.
So that would be a whole other variance that you'd have to file, so we would, and then, correct me if I'm wrong, Casey, you would have to pull this variance, and then you'd have to refile a new variance with the new lot lines and and as well as a new blueprint or layout of what this was gonna look like. It's not something that we could just visualize and say, oh, yeah.
We do respect, you have the ability to grant a variance with conditions. I've been before Board of Member One, we wanted 16 lots, and they granted us 15. Okay, they just did it.
Understandable, but given what has been discussed and given the change that you're looking to make, which would be significant, given that going from 4 buildings to 2 buildings, and, you're talking about you're really, I can appreciate what you're doing, and I can appreciate what you're looking to accomplish. I would say that, in Casey, correct me if I'm wrong on this, just for a point of clarity, it might be in your client's best interest to refile a variance based upon, we have a new set of plans drawn up. New set of plans drawn up and refile a variance based on the new set of plans with a new proposal of, units and all of that, and instead of just kind of making it off the cuff, hey, well, we'll just do 2 buildings instead of 1.
Sure, okay.
And because I think that for clarity at this point, and giving the passion of this variance, I would say that it would probably be in the best interest from a clarity standpoint, so that there's no ambiguity at all regarding all of this, so everybody is on the same playing field and understands what your client is looking to do. Then that would be my recommendation.
Okay. I appreciate that. Can I hold off 1 minute?
Sure. If you want to take 5 minutes, step off the floor, you can.
If I could.
If you want to take 5 minutes, step off the floor. Yep, 5-minute recess. Stretch.
You picked a good night to retake the reins.
Okay, so we're back in session, and
I'm on.
yeah, make sure your mic's on.
I got
Right,
green
you
light.
good? All right,
Yep.
good.
We're gonna withdraw this application before any decision is made, so withdrawing the application.
Okay, so the application's withdrawn. We don't need to vote or anything on that. Okay.
Okay, great.
Thank you very much. Thank
we'll
you.
be back.
Thank you. All right, so moving on is discussion of possible action regarding other items. Is there anything from town?
Nope, nothing from town.
Nothing coming up? Okay. And then we have the approval of minutes for the June 30th, folks. We still have a meeting. You can take it out to the hall. That'd be great. Thanks. Sure. If you want, you come up to the mic, just so we can, yeah, just so we can,
My name is Linda Bradish. I live at 5 Willow Street.
have a seat. All right, what's your question?
My question is, I just got a little confused. Since you approved the area to be resident, they withdrew their petition. So
Yes.
they just withdrew from the second part? So
They
does that
just-
mean the first part stays?
The first
They
part-
don't go through that again?
It can be residential.
Okay.
That's allowed now, whether it's them or somebody else or you.
Okay.
It can be residential. That's all that's been approved tonight.
Nothing else, okay. So when they redo their planning and all that stuff, are we gonna get another notice?
Yes.
So
Whatever
we'll
they
know?
decide to do, if they come, or if they decide to do anything, another notice will go out to the abutters like it did this time.
Okay,
And
so.
you'll be notified.
I know you don't do the planning board, but, so what happens with that? Like, do we get a say in that, or
Do you get a say
are we allowed to
in
go to that?
The zoning,
No,
or?
well, is that what happens when they plan
So,
stuff?
I'll clarify the next step for everyone here. So the next step for the people that, so as Lynn had said, it's approved for residential. The next step is they have withdrawn the petition or they've drawn the variance as you all have seen it. Now, their next step is they can come back with a new proposal, which it sounds like they may very well do based upon the discussion. And when they do, they will notify all the abutters of that variance, because it sounds like they're looking to do it, but they don't have the square footage. So they'll notify. Now, if they can do whatever, let's say they can build a 2-story apartment and parking lot, and it fits within all the, with setbacks and all of that, and it fits, then they don't need to come back here.
Okay,
They can, if it fits there. If it doesn't fit and they need to say, whatever, some sort of variance on something, then they have to come back here.
If this had been approved tonight, they still would have gone to the planning board.
okay, so that's what I was wondering. Okay, are we allowed to go to that?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yes. Mike.
If they plan to proceed with building, it
Mhm.
has to meet the residential requirement for residents in a C1 zone.
Exactly.
Right.
So if they
Which brings-
decide.
Which
Sorry.
brings back the issue of density and number of parking spaces.
Right.
Okay.
That's all planning board.
But if they came back and said, we're gonna build a duplex, and it's gonna fit in there, they may or may not have to come back.
Okay,
But
they
if
would
they're
just
gonna
go
do
to
something
planning
bigger,
board.
whatever. What?
Then they would just go to the planning board at that point?
Yeah.
Well,
You get another piece of the pie when they go to planning board. You can come up with all of the issues that, a lot of the ones that you have brought up tonight, parking, traffic, buffers, all of that.
All
Can-
that.
So are we
That's all
notified
planning
if they
board.
go to, just end up going to planning board, or do we have to keep a look on the website for that?
You can look.
You'll be like,
Planning board is twice a month,
Okay.
first and third Tuesdays.
Okay,
And this is always the fourth Wednesday, the last Wednesday of the month.
okay,
and if they, since there's no date set, whenever they decide to do this, whether it's next month, the month after, December, who knows? Whenever they decide, but a notice has to be sent out, certified letter like it was.
Okay.
To all the abutters, so you will be aware that this is happening.
They're starting
If
over
anyone-
completely, because they withdrew this, so it's all gone.
okay,
Now, anything they decide to do, they have to go through the same process they did to do this one.
okay.
So you'll all know.
All right, it's good to know.
Step up to the mic.
I'm sorry, just one more question.
Sure.
Are they allowed to resubmit the same exact plan?
Sure.
Yeah. They can, but I don't think they're going to, based upon this evening. I don't think I think what they're going to do, I don't know, don't quote me,
Based on what they said.
based on what they said, thank you very much, they're looking at a two-building situation. Now, what does that look like? What does that involve? We don't know.
They
They're
could
going
come
to
back
square
and
one.
say, based on the financials here, the 4 buildings just don't cut it. And we're gonna build a 4-story, 4 buildings. They could do that. I don't think they would, but
Can I
they
ask one more
could.
question?
Sure.
So can the other neighbors who aren't abutted to the property, can they come in and,
Of course,
for
sure.
their concerns or whatever
Yeah.
too?
The abutters
Even
get.
though they don't get a
The
letter?
abutters get noticed,
Okay.
but anybody in town can come and speak.
Well, Mr. Mower is not in the butter. No,
So you
Well,
could-
I have a
no,
feeling he's
To
always
answer
here.
your question, he's not in the butter, and he was allowed to speak.
Right.
I mean,
Okay.
anybody, you could live on the south side of town. be able to
You may not be in a butter, but it's still, any development might still affect you, and so you can come in and you can talk about it,
Okay.
so.
I just have one quick question.
Sure, yeah.
To build on this.
Yes.
So we weren't notified until it came to this committee, if you will. So I heard a lot of talk about it'll have to go through the planning committee, and we will be notified?
Yes.
Yes,
By the planning committee?
yes. So if,
So this one didn't go through the planning committee first?
no,
No.
this is zoning.
Okay.
Two,
So if
I
it-
know, I
yeah,
know
okay,
this is
okay.
zoning,
Okay.
but I heard a lot of talk about,
We had-
hey, did this already go through planning? So this apparently
Right,
did
we had
not.
to give them permission to do certain
Oh,
things.
okay.
Yeah.
Before
If
could
we
even
gave
get
them
to that.
permission, they
Still-
would go to the
you-
plan.
You
yeah.
still have
Okay.
the issues around variances for setbacks, et cetera, minimum lot size per unit. So there's still issues that have to come back
So it'll
before,
probably come back before here,
if
but
they
it may
want to
not.
proceed
Yes.
with
Yeah,
building
I got it.
residential.
Yes.
Okay, I just wondered if it had, but I get it. Now, you guys had to actually make an approval before they could proceed with that next step.
Yeah.
Correct.
And now they can proceed with that next step, but it depends on.
No, 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 no.
no.
They
No,
withdrew.
no.
They withdrew.
They
have-
withdrew,
Right, with a new proposal. or
Yes.
They have
another
to-
proposal.
they have to
No, I
come
under-
back
I-
here.
I'm clear. I got it.
Okay,
I
okay.
appreciate it. Thank you.
And you will be,
has it, so yes.
you will be notified
Yeah.
whether they come to this board
Or the planning
or they're
commission.
able to avoid us and go right to planning.
Right.
You will be notified.
Yeah, that's
as an
critical
abutter.
to me, and that was the biggest question. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sorry, I have one more question.
Oh,
So
please.
If it goes, manage to get to planning board, can the planning board deny?
Yes,
Okay, so they can still deny.
yes,
Huge conditions on it.
yes.
Okay, all right, good, good to
Yeah,
know.
the-
Thank you.
Well, just to clarify, just to clarify, the board can't deny a use if it's an allowed use, but the board can place conditions and regulate things like lighting and landscaping and parking.
So they can't change the, like,
The-
say,
they can't-
structures or, like, if they already decided on the 4 buildings, they can't say no?
If
If
the,
you already said yes,
if
can't
they
say
say,
no.
yeah, I
No,
mean,
said
they can
yes
talk
to
about,
residents, honey. They didn't
Yeah.
say yes to everything.
the planning board can talk about the configuration, but in terms of the density, receiving a variance, that's this board.
Okay, so whatever you guys agree to, the planning board will agree to.
This proposal that they had tonight, when it went to planning board could say, we don't agree with the number of parking spaces you've done, we don't agree with the, number of units, we don't, there's so many things that the planning board has control over,
Okay,
that we don't.
right, right.
That all of those things, buffer, you need this kind of a buffer, so the trees might not be able to be cut down, or all of those things.
Or they have, or they may have to put up trees, or they may have to put up a fence, or they may have to put up something. Yeah, that's all planning. We don't have,
Right.
we just say whether or not you can do something like that.
This is just the ordinance and the setback.
All right.
Yeah,
No, I-
gotcha.
Gets confusing. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll try to eat dinner now.
All right,
Thank you.
okay, so minutes.
I make a motion that we accept the minutes of, let me get my glasses, Wednesday, June 30th, 2021.
I have a second?
Second?
All right, motion made by Rod, seconded by Ben. All in favor?
Aye.
You watched it?
I watched it.
All righty, all right. So, anything else to discuss? Tell us. Excellent. So, then there's the final motion. A motion
Second.
to adjourn, and seconded, made by Lynn, seconded by Rod. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a
Nice
great
nice job tonight.
July. Thank you. Yes, it was
It was-
interesting to.
It was.